For some, it may mean nothing, but for those who have fallen, that single step may seem like a cliff. The reminder was that to help someone who had fallen, just one word was enough. With that, he calls out to Lee Seaman as energy flows from his eye. He states that the boy was not a coward, acknowledging his courage and determination to face challenges. And those words changed everything, bringing a new perspective and hope to the young man on his journey. Since the appearance of monsters that wiped out humanity, the world had been divided between raiders and non-raiders. The raider management building is shown with its huge windows. Steadying on a bench, Seaman is called by the receptionist, feeling his heart race with anticipation. Nervously, he decides there was no way to run from it, knowing it was time to face the situation. To become a raider, one must undergo the awakening judgment that searches for one's aura and then take a qualification exam. The protagonist descends by elevator, feeling his anxiety grow with each floor. He looks at the lab, observing the instruments laid out in the room. The doctor skips the explanations since the boy had undergone that procedure many times and was familiar with it. She also explains that next year, he would be there for the military, preparing for what was to come. Concerned about the boy's condition, she asked if he needs counseling, offering support. It would not be possible to continue as things were since the circumstances demanded an urgent change. The boy replies that he just wanted to take the test and leave, showing his sadness. He enters the giant machine, feeling a mix of anxiety and anticipation for what was to come. The result of his test is 103, the same as previous years. Upon seeing that number, he feels sad and that it never changes, not even by the slightest amount. The doctor hands him a paper and asks him to sign it, explaining the importance of the document. There was a time when he believed it would be possible to reach his goals, dreaming of a better future. The protagonist thanks her and exits the machine, realizing how harsh reality was on him and his expectations. The clouds part across the blue sky, revealing a sunny and promising day. The boy calmly opens the door, feeling the familiarity of the environment around him, and he enters his messy apartment with scattered objects that reflect his hectic routine. He opens his computer assuming the game rewards would have been good and satisfying, but is surprised to see something different, something that completely changes his expectations and plans. It was a message about a qualification requirement that had been confirmed. It was a website with countless pieces of government information, but he wasn't sure how to use it. He started fiddling with the computer, searching for more information. Suddenly, he realized what it was about, understanding the importance of the information he had found. Tony wanted to learn more about that mysterious site, intrigued by the contents and their implications. In his chair, he read all the posted texts, absorbing every detail and trying to uncover the hidden secrets. He wanted to unravel all the mysteries behind that web page on the computer. He decided to check the day's news, curious to know what was happening in the world. He is shocked to read something about the raider, and Sunjin, who had received the platinum mark. All those comments praised the man, exalting his achievements and impressive skills on the battlefield. But the boy was angry, thinking it was a cruel and unfair joke, because he used to see that face every day, the one that mistreated him without mercy or compassion. He hated the fact that that bastard had become a renowned raider, feeling betrayed and frustrated by the situation. He takes down a note from the wall showing his daily exercises, trying to distract himself from the frustration. He was still very frustrated with the news he had read, feeling the rage bubbling inside him. Crumpling the paper, he showed his anger and making it clear how much that situation bothered him. He opened the computer again, determined to find a way to deal with his frustrations. The protagonist knew he was a loser for dropping out of school, thinking he would become a raider. The qualification message appears again, but he doesn't understand what it means. It seemed like the entry of a new member. He starts a conversation with someone named Kim Bong-hak. Looking a bit more, he sees other messages and doubts that really was a sorcerer. Unaware, a force begins to appear in his room. A hole starts to form, but he doesn't care, sending messages for his computer partner to find him. Looking back, he realizes the enormous force that awaited him. A voice calls out to him, asking if he was really the unemployed bum Lee Seaman. The boy is frightened by what was in front of him, feeling a chill down his spine. The rift reveals another world completely different, full of colors and unknown shapes. The woman touches the water with her feet, exploring the liquid surface and feeling the vibrant energy. Curious, she states that she came precisely to meet the boy, revealing her intention directly. She crosses the portal and now enters Seaman's world, defying the rules of reality. In disbelief, the boy lets out a surprise scream at the woman's unexpected and mysterious appearance. But the sorcerers cast something at him, enveloping him in magical energy that alters his perception of the situation. He tries to resist, but lets it slip, while the tension in the air increases between the two. She is extremely powerful with the help of her staff and asks him not to get so agitated. The air seems to leave his lungs, making it hard to breathe and increasing his desperation. The woman realizes he is very weak, assessing his condition and the need to help him. and she doesn't understand how he managed to connect to the transcendent networks since his abilities were so simple. Held by the woman, the boy finds no way out, feeling the pressure of the situation increase every moment. Curious, she wants to know his identity, but he would only speak if she let him go first, determined to protect his privacy. Without thinking twice, she unties him, deciding the information was more important than caution, and he falls with his full weight to the floor, feeling the impact and sudden freedom. The girl introduces herself as Iona, smiling as she observes his reaction and the situation around them, and she asks if he was lying about being a raider. Stammering, the boy says he's not a full raider yet, but he would become one. He explains that in his world, not everyone had enough aura to become raiders and hunt beasts. Interested, she asked him to show his aura. He brings his hands together and begins to demonstrate his powers, concentrating all his energy into a single point. But his energy is still extremely weak, unable to sustain itself for long under the pressure. The light that emanates from his hands flickers, reflecting his inner struggle and lack of strength. The woman can't believe that, was all surprised by the weakness of the power demonstration. But the boy seems extremely confident, determined to show he still has something to offer. Laughing, she asks if this is some kind of joke, finding the situation somewhat comical. Everything in the apartment starts to move as if an invisible energy were awakening and coming to life. The clothes on the drying rack are swayed by an intense wind, creating a spectacle of movement around them. The powerful Iona reveals her aura, emanating a vibrant energy that lights up the room around her. And the boy is extremely impressed by her power, admiring the strength she displays effortlessly. In her essence, she could be a monster, leaving a disturbing doubt in his mind. The woman continues glowing as she calls out to the boy. Afraid, he begs for his life, feeling the pressure of the situation and the imminent threat. Someone knocks at the door, asking if the boy from room 203 was okay, interrupting the tense moment. The noise sounded like an earthquake, making the walls shake and increasing the anxiety in the room. The woman stops using her powers, realizing that the situation was becoming more complicated than she expected, and she realizes she used her saved points on a loser, reflecting on her choices and what they meant. Nervous, she wants to know how someone like him managed to access the transcendent network, but the boy has no explanations. He just opened his computer and saw all of that in front of him, surprised by the situation. Looking at the equipment, she demands that he keep explaining, her curiosity growing with each moment. Finally, she asks him to talk about himself while observing his feelings and reactions closely. Laughing, the boy said he had nothing special, trying to divert attention from his reality. The woman notices that the boy lives miserably, noticing the signs of his daily struggle and loneliness. And he seemed extremely pathetic, making her question her choices in his future. Her gaze remains fixed on her reflections. Those words of indifference were filled with comfort. So he began to tell his story about being a lucky orphan not accepted by his current parents. He was evaluated as an awakened individual during his school years, but severe bullying led him to give up. So he ended up with this current life, tired of his numbers never changing for 6 long years. With that, the girl realizes that his story was very boring, lacking emotion or interest. And she needed to leave, feeling she had wasted time on a conversation that didn't captivate her. She exits through the portal saying he shouldn't mess with the transcendent network anymore or he might end up dead. Before disappearing, she gave one last reminder, engraving her words in the boy's mind. Looking into his eyes, she stated that the world was inherently unfair, truth he needed to accept. But even so, he should go out and do something since he was human and should live. Finally, the protagonist asks if they could meet again, hoping for a positive answer. But she doesn't respond. She only gives an enigmatic smile and tells him to transcend, leaving him intrigued. What it meant to stand side by side with them, an idea that both fascinates and frightens him at the same time. Looking at something in his hand, he wonders if he too could become a transcendent, wanting to understand more about it. He writes an apology letter expressing his feelings and the need to redeem himself for his actions. Determined, he writes to the brothers and sisters of the transcendent network. He types that Lee Seaman, the unemployed bum, was about to explode his mind with intense thoughts. Since then, watching the transcendent network had become part of his daily routine. He saw a new photo of the famous Black Lion who was born the son of a slave from a noble family and became a mercenary after the loss of his mother, turning into the strongest warrior on the continent by defeating the nobility. The man had posted a family photo from his last trip, full of happy memories. Soon after, he saw something about Persian Hyung Nim, who possessed the Persian demon sword, a legendary weapon. He was the #1 sword master on the continent, known for his unmatched skills and fame. The boy chatted with the character, who was asking for tips about a girl, seeking advice on how to approach her. The boy's pastime was that transcendent network. The tip was to get closer to a girl's heart through her emotions, even using a pickup line. He could ask where her wings were, referring to the girl's angelic appearance. And if she smiled, he could say his heart would explode because of her smile. He gave tip after tip to his online friend. Hyungnim thanked him for the advice and said that if all went well, he would stop by to visit his companion. When Seaman read that message, he became extremely worried, feeling a chill down his spine. Since he wasn't supposed to be interacting with transcendent beings, he knew it could bring serious consequences. He remembered that they kept their promises, never turning their backs after making a commitment. Unlike them, the boy's routine was totally boring with no excitement or challenges to motivate him. And he had to admit something to himself, acknowledging his limitations and the reality of his life. Since someone like him could never be a raider, he felt trapped in his own mediocrity. Distressed, he grabbed a bottle, seeking a way to escape his thoughts and frustrations, and he drank the entire contents at once, trying to drown his worries and inner pain. Tired, he threw himself on the bed, seeking a bit of comfort after an exhausting day. With eyes full of tears, he realized he had created false hopes about himself, reflecting on his choices. Until now, he had never imagined anything different, feeling stuck in a cycle of disappointment and frustration. He really wanted to become a true raider and prove that he hadn't been wrong all this time. He wanted to proudly show them his achievements, but the reality was very different. But after being stuck at level 103, 6 years must have passed with no progress. And now the character couldn't even get out of bed, feeling completely defeated and unmotivated. Just using his computer for days, he got lost in a cycle of apathy and loneliness. He wrote a message saying he truly wanted to change his life. While drinking a little more from his bottle, he tried to find the courage to change his situation. With bravery, he made a post, hoping his words might resonate with someone who would understand. And he fell asleep, collapsing on top of the laptop, exhausted and without energy. Sometime later, he began to wake up, feeling the confusion and disorientation around him. With a hand on his face, he realized he had slept, surprised by how much time had passed without him noticing. His face turned red upon realizing he had written something on the forum while drunk. He began scrolling through the pages and reading everything there, absorbing each word and feeling. Countless messages of support were sent to him, filling him with unexpected hope and motivation. The boy became extremely thoughtful, pondering his choices and the impact he had on those around him. While a light appeared in his room, he felt a shift in the atmosphere as if something was about to happen. Without realizing it, the figure was already behind him while he was still happy with the messages he had received. A voice asked if that was the unemployed bum, sounding authoritarian and full of disdain. Afraid the boy didn't move, paralyzed by the tension and the uncertainty of what would come next. Trembling for his life, he recognized who it was just by hearing the familiar and threatening voice. The transcendent member touches his back, causing a wave of energy to surge through his body. Suddenly, he jumps out of his chair, surprised and frightened, feeling adrenaline take over him. His body is radiated by an intense energy pulsing, the force he had never felt before. His veins bulge and it looked like snakes were all over his body, sliding under his skin. He remembers a colleague telling him not to show off, a warning that echoes in his mind. The masked figure remains in his room, emanating a threatening presence that makes him uneasy. Angrily, the boy looks back, staring at the figure with determination and defying his fear. His fist begins to clench, preparing to try to defend himself. He wouldn't give up so easily, determined to fight for his dignity and for a better future. He tries to dodge the masked figure while enduring the pain. Suddenly, the two characters are in a completely different place. Lost, the boy doesn't recognize the space. Daiko Chiyama, the greatest martial artist in history, declares that Seaman would no longer be a coward. In a world where a modern fantasy intertwines with reality, a young man finds himself facing unimaginable challenges. Amid intense battles and surprising discoveries, he realizes that his strength is unmatched, capable of shaking even the most powerful opponents. Rumors about his ability spread quickly, drawing the attention of allies and enemies alike. His body, once used to a mundane routine, now adapts to a new reality where extraordinary powers manifest. The sudden feeling of lightness suggests that something has deeply changed within him. As he faces increasingly difficult trials, he encounters legendary figures like the great witch Lina, whose strength is admired by many. But even when facing such formidable beings, he realizes that he has the potential to go beyond, to bend the world to his will. Between battles and moments of introspection, the journey continues. Each step brings him closer to an unknown destiny where hidden secrets await to be revealed. In a moment of solitude, he looked around and realized that after all the cleaning, the only remnant of trash left in that room was himself. The feeling of inadequacy hit him, but deep down, a flame of determination still burned. Destiny belonged to the persistent, to those who refused to give up. To change his own path, he needed to become the strongest, the one who invades and conquers without hesitation. And the stars shine for those who gaze at them, and he wished to reach that light. The memories of the past returned, bringing with them the recollection of a striking encounter and words that echoed in his mind. He had never been a coward and needed to prove it. Exhaustion took over his body after a simple run, and hunger became unbearable. Still, he knew he couldn't stop. Deep down, he always knew he needed to change. The repression of what was weak and useless had to end. If he wanted a new beginning, he would have to seek strength with his own hands. The world offered no mercy to the weak. Only those who grow stronger have the right to move forward. Upon entering a gym, he found himself in an environment filled with the smell of sweat and determination. In front of him, an extremely muscular man watched him with interest. Trainer Kim Deokwa quickly noticed his presence. His experienced gaze caught something in the newcomer, as if he could sense his hesitation. Without mincing words, he asked if the newcomer was really there to train. Then the atmosphere grew tense for a moment, but there was no turning back. With no other option, he followed the trainer's instructions and began the warm-up. With the intense pace, the toll soon came, and his body began to feel the effects of the effort. Kim Deokba, however, noticed something different. There was a foundation there, a remnant of past conditioning. Smiling confidently, the trainer assured him that with dedication, he could regain his form quickly. And the training continued, and exhaustion wasn't long in coming. Gasping, he tried to catch his breath, realizing that this journey would be more challenging than he had imagined. But if he wanted to change, there was no other path to follow. His training intensified and pushed his body to the limit. Every muscle burned, every breath felt insufficient, but the trainer's words echoed in his mind. There was no room for hesitation. If he fell, he had to get up. And if he wanted to change, he had to act without doubting himself. Determined not to give up, he forced his legs to move again. His problem wasn't a lack of strength or endurance, but a lack of confidence. With a new drive, he kept going even when exhaustion threatened to bring him down. When the training finally ended, a rare feeling of accomplishment took hold of him. It had been a long time since he had felt that sensation, as if he were truly moving forward, but it was still only the beginning. Upon returning home, he remembered something important. The advice of a certain brother, Daiko Chiyama, came to mind to check the tip board. Accessing the system, he came across a new challenge. A specific mission had been assigned to him. To move forward, he needed to reduce his weight to under 100 kilograms. At first, the shock quickly gave way to determination. If that was the first step toward achieving his goal, then there was no choice but to face the challenge head-on. With the mission clear in his mind, Lee Simon decided he would do the impossible to reach his goal. Reducing his weight to under 100 kilograms would not be easy, but he was determined. Every day, he went out to run, ignoring exhaustion and muscle pain. At the beginning, each step felt like torment, but he kept pushing to overcome his own limits. Sweat soaked his clothes and his breath faltered, but the goal was clear. He could not give up. As the days passed, the changes began to show. His body was no longer as heavy. His movements were more agile, and even those around him started to notice. Some were impressed to see him running tirelessly, while others simply watched, doubting his persistence. Looking at the scale, he wondered if he had already lost a bit of weight. Even if the progress was slow, he knew he was on the right path. With this renewed motivation, he decided he would push even harder the next day. The transformation was not only physical, but also mental. He was no longer the same man as before, and little by little, he was getting closer to becoming truly strong. Every drop of sweat that fell to the ground was proof of Lee Seaman's unwavering effort. He knew that if he wanted to become stronger, he had to keep going, regardless of the pain or fatigue. His intense training did not go unnoticed. Under-gym goers began to notice his dedication, admiring his determination. It was rare to see someone putting in so much effort, however, not everyone shared the same respect. Between ordinary people and the so-called invaders, there was an insurmountable barrier. Even those at lower levels who had surpassed the blue mark possessed physical capabilities far beyond normal humans. For them, the world worked differently, immense rewards and a sense of privilege that separated them from the rest of society. Despite this, Lee Seaman did not let himself be shaken. He felt the presence of these powerful people around him, but that only fueled his determination. He was not a coward. Even if he had to fight against all odds, you would keep moving forward until he achieved his goal. After weeks of hard training and unwavering determination, Lee Seaman was finally close to reaching his first goal. The moment of truth had arrived. With anticipation, he stepped on the scale, holding his breath. Then the display lit up with the numbers, 100.02 kilograms. Frustration took over him, just 0.02 kilograms above the target. For a moment, he thought of the most obvious solution. Maybe a trip to the bathroom would do it. Wasting no time, he tried again. The display now read 100.0005. He couldn't believe it. Even after all the effort, he was still a fraction away from the goal. But he would not give up. Pushing out every last drop of sweat and water from his body, the scale finally showed 99.9 kilograms. A message appeared before him confirming his success. As a reward for completing the mission, he received 100 points in the Transcendent Network. However, there was still a limitation. The tip board could only be accessed by members level 2 or higher. Even so, this was just the beginning, and he had proven to himself that he could change. Now all that remained was to keep moving forward. After accessing the Transcendent Network tip board, Lee Seaman realized that increasing his level required 100 points. Determined, he didn't hesitate to confirm his decision. In front of him, several posts appeared covering various topics. From legendary martial techniques to hidden mysteries about the invaders, everything seemed possible within that space. Some posts promised unbelievable abilities, while others talked about unexplained phenomena. With each reading, 100 points were deducted, and to publish something, the cost was 200 points. However, any view received on one's own post generated a return of 10 points. As a celebration for the first access, he had the chance to read one post without spending anything. His attention was immediately drawn to the unemployed bum Lee Seaman. The author of the post was none other than Daiko Chiyama, the greatest demonic martial artist. Upon opening the post, he was introduced to a transcendental ability called Void Severance. The text explained that the flow of internal energy begins in the lower dantian and circulates through the entire body, completing a cycle. However, those with severed meridians were unable to perform this circulation correctly, causing their energy to dissipate like smoke. The solution presented was clear. If an appropriate cultivation method were applied, then the circulation of internal energy could be restored, allowing the body to escape this limitation. Daiko Chidomana claimed he would transmit this transcendental ability to those who followed his instructions. The technique was called Taijutsu Flow, and its practice promised to unlock the true potential of the body and internal energy. Until that moment, Lee Seaman had always seen aura as something to be dominated and conquered. Now he was beginning to see a new perspective on his own path. However, Daikochiyama, the celestial demon, treated aura as if it were a life form with its own will. That had been the answer all along, a deep understanding of the nature of aura that he passed on to his followers. Sitting on a bench, the young man took a deep breath, feeling the weight of training. The blue glow flowed through his hands as he focused, guiding the energy through his body. He told himself that he needed to break through his internal blockages. With a crack, the aura expanded, breaking through an invisible barrier. The pressure around him fluctuated, and he let out a sigh while looking up at the sky. There was still a long way to go, but that was a step forward. The technique taught by Daiko Chiyama required absolute concentration, and the aura was meant to flow naturally, spreading like roots and adapting to the environment like water. The trading demanded discipline, requiring patience and control. Elsewhere, the Tarsing Private Raid Training Academy remained in full activity. The heat of simulated battles and intense exercises filled the environment where rising warriors sought to improve their skills. Inside the building, a student approached his superior, bringing a report. Someone was waiting to see him. The leader's watchful gaze lifted, pondering the visitor's identity before making a decision. It was Lee Seaman, his former student, and a long time had passed since their last encounter. Wen Zhonghoon watched with surprise and satisfaction the presence of Lee Seaman, who now stood before him. He recognized him immediately, as well as the pride in the young man's progress. The journeys at that point had been arduous, but the effort had been rewarded. Regardless of whether he had become a raider or not, the achievement was undeniable. The atmosphere filled the sense of camaraderie, and the idea of a celebration seemed fitting. However, Lee Seaman was not there for that. Wen Zhonghoon realized there was a more serious reason behind the visit. The young man's determined gaze revealed his true intent. He needed an evaluation. His aura, which once seemed like an obstacle, now needed to be examined carefully. His master accepted the request and instructed his students to continue self-training while he stepped away. The examination began. The aura measurement was conducted with precision, revealing a surprising result. The curse that at once limited him had been removed. The progress he had made in just 1 month was impressive. Circulating his aura using the supreme method had been the key to overcoming that barrier. The question naturally arose: how had he accomplished such a feat? The answer, however, held no great secrets. He had simply followed the advice of someone he had met by chance, testing whether it would work. A simple act of trying opened the path to something extraordinary. Wan Zhonghoon displayed enthusiasm at Lee Seaman's evolution. Fascinated by the young man's progress, he saw an opportunity to test him even further. He proposed a sparring match, something that could benefit not only Seaman, but also another student at the academy. There was one particularly arrogant student who relied solely on the raw power of his aura. To the master, that duel would serve as a valuable lesson, a way to show him the limitations of his approach. Moreover, he was certain that Lee Seaman would have no trouble handling him. Faced with the proposal, Seaman hesitated for a moment, pondering the situation. He asked what the opponent's aura level was and received the answer, approximately 1000. That surprised him. The master was really putting someone who had barely reached that level up against him. Doubt settled in, but at the same time, curiosity was awakened. Soon, the opponent introduced himself. Jinsei, confident and unconcerned, stared at Seaman with a sharp gaze. The greeting between the two was brief. Without ceremony, the fight was about to begin. The rules were simple: hand-to-hand combat with no weapons. The match began and Jinsei, inflated by his confidence, charged in without hesitation. His plan was clear: to defeat his opponent using only his aura. But in the heat of the battle, the first attack failed. Still pressing forward against the protagonist, he claimed that this was the end for him. But in the blink of an eye, Lee Seaman trapped the boy's legs, slamming him hard to the ground and then performing a grappling technique. Raiders, for the most part, did not usually dedicate significant time to training in martial arts, and the reason was simple. Situations where those skills were useful were rare. Their battles most often occurred against non-humanoid monsters, where hand-to-hand combat techniques lost relevance in the face of efficient aura usage and powerful weapons. However, at that moment, the situation was different. There, inside the academy, the fight was not against an irrational creature, but between two human combatants. In this context, technique and strategy made all the difference. The combat began with intensity, but it quickly became evident who dominated the fight. Lee Sinmun moved with fluidity and precision, anticipating each of Jinsei's attacks and responding efficiently. His opponent, used to relying solely on his aura, found himself in trouble. Strikes were thrown, but only hit air. Desperate attempts to land a blow on Sinmun resulted in ineffective movements, while he remained one step ahead. The advantage was clear. Lee Seaman controlled the pace of the combat without giving his opponent any chance to recover, and that fight seemed to have only one possible outcome. Lee Seaman's victory over Jinshi was undeniable, but Master Guangzhong Hunan maintained a calm demeanor. He knew that the result was not only due to Seaman's natural talent, but also the relentless dedication the young man had shown over time. While Jinshi blindly trusted in his aura, Seaman's had shaped his body and mind through hard and continuous training. That fight had come to an end, but the impact of the victory did not go unnoticed. Lee Seaman's name began to spread, drawing the attention of other students and even newcomers who aspire to follow a similar path. Amid the whispers in the academy, comments about his impressive transformation spread quickly. And among the curious, a hesitant young man approached, showing admiration and disbelief. He asked whether Seaman's physical change had really occurred in just 3 months. The answer was direct. It was possible as long as there was determination and genuine effort. Inspired, the young man expressed his desire to reach the same level. However, before beginning any journey, he was reminded of something essential: respect for hierarchy. Before asking Lee Seaman for guidance, he should show consideration to the true leader of the place. Director Kim Daokbo finally introduced himself. With a firm yet welcoming expression, he invited the new recruits for a more private conversation in his office. Then the atmosphere was filled with expectation, but one question lingered in the air. Would those newcomers have the willpower necessary to endure the same path Lee Seaman had walked? The new recruits demonstrated unwavering determination. Without any hesitation, they accepted the terms without the possibility of withdrawal and even stamped the documents, sealing their commitment to the training. Director Kim Daok-ba watched the scene with a satisfied smile. Youthful determination was always admirable, but the real question was whether they could sustain that drive as they faced real challenges. Meanwhile, the training intensified. The beginning of the martial arts technique, Xingyi Quan, marked a new phase for the students. From the very first day, the physical demands already proved overwhelming. The effort was relentless and some were already showing signs of exhaustion. Among the watchful eyes of the academy, some veterans observed the newcomers with curiosity and skepticism. Comments arose among them questioning the presence of a new member. For some, that newcomer had the demeanor of an invader, and for others, he simply seemed like an experienced outsider, someone who had already walked a longer path than they had. The environment was full of expectations, and each new step indicated that the training had only just begun. In recent days, Lee Seaman began to notice strange glances following him whenever he went to the academy. The feeling of being watched bothered him, but he couldn't understand why. Among the familiar faces, one specific look stood out. A thin and seemingly reserved newcomer seemed to observe him frequently. Seaman felt uncomfortable with the situation, unsure how to interpret that sudden attention. When the approach finally happened, it came unexpectedly. The young man introduced himself with some hesitation, but soon revealed his intention. He suspected Lee Seaman's true identity. The question caught Seaman off guard. The newcomer wanted to know if he was a raider. For a moment, Seaman worried that his identity might have been compromised, but he quickly realized that the tone of the conversation wasn't hostile. With a relieved sigh, he confirmed that although he wasn't yet an official raider, he was preparing for the test that would happen in a month. Then the young man made a revelation of his own. He too is an awakened. However, unlike Seaman, his parents forbade him from following the path of a raider until he became an adult. Even so, he wanted to strengthen his abilities, seeking a middle ground between studies and training. Stephen understood the situation. Becoming a raider required more than just talent and aura. He demanded intense commitment and countless hours of dedication. But the boy in front of him didn't seem willing to give up. When asked about his motivation, he answered without hesitation. To him, being a raider was simply amazing. The profession was the most desired among students in Korea, and nothing seemed more exciting than becoming one. Curious, Seaman asked if he could already manipulate aura. The young man confirmed, though with some uncertainty. Stayman then challenged him to demonstrate it. The test would happen right there and then. Lee Sin-min watched closely as the young man demonstrated his ability with aura. Though a beginner, he seemed to have a solid foundation, mentioning he had learned from a beginner's course taught by the renowned raider An Seung-jin. Stigman nodded, encouraging him to keep practicing. Aura control was one of the most important fundamentals for a raider, and the young man showed great enthusiasm for improving his skills. The exchange between the two strengthened his sense of camaraderie. The newcomer recognized Seaman as someone on the same path, someone who shared the same ambition. He said they would meet at the top as true talents of the future. Seaman smiled at the boy's confidence and responded with the same determination. That encounter rekindled his own competitive spirit. If the newcomers were training so hard, he couldn't afford to relax. Determined to push himself further, Seaman focused on the fundamentals of aura manipulation, reviewing the basic teachings with seriousness. At the same time, the raider qualification test was approaching quickly. Stayman began to search for information about the exam, accessing bulletin boards and historical records. The deepened test, considered the most challenging phase of qualification, was shrouded in mystery. Every year, the format of the test changed unpredictably, with no one knowing in advance what the challenge would be. He knew the only way to be ready for anything was to further strengthen his skills. With that in mind, he intensified his training, determined to face any obstacle that came his way. Lee Sigmund continued his intense preparation for the raider qualification exam, aware that even those who passed the earlier stages often failed the final deepened test. The exam was unpredictable and sparked discussions among candidates and experts. Many questioned the usefulness of certain challenges, arguing that being a raider should be about fighting and eliminating monsters. While researching the test, Seaman came across ads promising predictions of practical questions, even suggesting contacts within the association. He dismissed the idea of buying information, believing only those insecure in their own abilities resorted to such methods. During his routine, he was approached by Kim Seon, an employee of the company that was also investing a promising rookie. The conversation took an unexpected turn when Seong-hun proposed a bet between her rookie and Seaman to see who would perform better on the exam. Stigman accepted without hesitation, seeing the opportunity as yet another reason to give his all. Even more determined, he promised himself that he would make his name echo among the raiders. His training and dedication would take him to the top without shortcuts or unfair advantages. Lee Seaman entered the qualification exam room determined to give his best. He knew this year's test would be difficult, but that didn't intimidate him. Even before the test began, he noticed the presence of someone familiar in the room. Another candidate who seemed to know him also showed a strong desire to overcome, refusing to be left behind. Stephen kept his focus, remembering all the effort he had put in up to that moment. The first exam was written and required deep knowledge about monsters, combat strategies, and risk situations. Some questions included ancient texts and complex calculations, while others demanded quick interpretation of battle scenarios. Lee carefully analyzed each question, recalling what he had studied and applying logical reasoning. He felt that despite the difficulty, all of his preparation had been worth it. It wasn't enough to have strength, intelligence, and knowledge were equally essential to becoming a true raider. The written exam came to an end, and Lee Simon put down his pen, feeling the tension dissipate. He looked around and saw that many candidates were exhausted, some still mentally reviewing their answers. Then the bell echoed through the room, marking the official end of the test, and the exam proctor announced the end of the time and instructed everyone to stop writing. However, 3 candidates continued to move, trying to add something to their sheets. The proctor warned them, but the decision had already been made. The 3 were immediately disqualified. Shock filled the room. That moment served as a reminder that in the world of raiders, following the rules was not a choice, but a necessity for survival. The explanation was direct and firm. Following the rules was essential because any carelessness could put the entire team at risk. The candidates remained silent, absorbing a lesson. With one last warning, the examiner wished everyone good luck. Seaman took a deep breath. The written exam was just the first obstacle, but the real challenge was yet to come, the depth test. And the weight of the exam still over Lee Seaman as he tried to calm himself. The exam had been difficult, but he believed he had done well enough to pass. Now the next challenge would be the aura measurement. The minimum requirement for a qualified raider was 5,000, and the last time he checked, his level was at 5,100. He knew if he was on the edge but couldn't let insecurity take over. As he tried to focus, he noticed movement around him. Some candidates were using aura inside the waiting room, showing confidence, or maybe trying to intimidate others. Seaman felt the pressure increase and his thoughts started to become chaotic. To dispel the nervousness, he tried to recall the teachings of the celestial demon Daiko Chima, the harmony between yin and yang, the principles of origin, prosperity, and integrity. He took a deep breath, seeking balance. At that moment, flashes from the past invaded his mind. He remembered the time he declared his desire to become a raider. His adoptive parents had never doubted him, always supporting him without hesitation. That thought brought a new breath, renewing his determination. Lost in his own concentration, he was abruptly interrupted by the teacher calling his attention. Cultivating aura in a safe place was essential, and he had completely forgotten about his surroundings. Recognizing his mistake, he quickly apologized. Lee Semin listened attentively while the other raiders spoke about his experiences. He understood that despite the principles and rules, there were times when survival came before any teaching. The veteran mentioned how he had to cultivate aura in forests infested with monsters and how he never had a moment of rest since entering the raider life. Each battle was dangerous, but one in particular was engraved in his memory, the subjugation of the gate. Lee was immediately interested. The raider said that beyond the gate, he encountered countless strange beings, but one of them was particularly terrifying, the Black Castle. That monster, despite being listed in the Monster Encyclopedia, was never officially recorded because no one had managed to kill it. He described how he attacked the creature several times without it even retreating, slowly approaching him. The fear was still evident in his voice. Seaman was about to ask for more details when he was interrupted by the announcement of the end of the aura measurement. His heart raced as he realized he needed to hurry. Then the site manager appeared and, realizing the urgency, promptly offered to guide him to the first floor. Someone thanked him and quickly headed to the measurement, knowing it would be a decisive moment in his life. The scene grew tense with the unexpected announcement of an aura over 30,000. Everyone around was surprised and the environment quickly filled with murmurs and speculation. It was a girl with a confident gaze who entered the place, but the others had not yet noticed her presence there. And the aura was so high that it shocked everyone. It was a level rarely seen among exam candidates. The news spread quickly, and even the previously calm managers seemed surprised by the information. Now the situation became more competitive and intense. Who was this person with such strength, and what would it mean for the other candidates, like Lee Semin, who was about to measure his own aura? The tension rose, and everyone was on alert, knowing that someone with such powerful aura could change the course of the competition. Our protagonist walked through the corridors while shouting the outrageous value to be reached, 30,000, while professionals usually achieve around 20,000. He questioned what kind of child she was while his colleague told him she was called Bang Yu Bai and added that she was supposedly amazing. After hearing that name, he began to wonder mentally if this someone was just a girl, while the others lamented. Our hero started remembering the redhead while getting irritated, not wanting to believe it could be her. He asked his colleague if there were any disqualified candidates in that place, but his colleague said it was impossible to score less than 5,000 points. The protagonist gave a nervous chuckle while confirming what his colleague had said, adding that his score was only 5,100. The line kept moving with candidates entering the room one by one, with our boy being the last one to be called. The doctor asked him to lie down on the machine to perform the test. He obeyed, lying down and beginning his meditation. While being scanned, he appeared very nervous, clenching his fingers tightly, until the doctor called him and added that his result was 7180 points. The protagonist suddenly stands up as the doctor thanks him for participating. The boy starts crying with happiness for having achieved a much higher score than before, and he begins to thank endlessly as if he were giving praise to God for the result. Then he starts thanking the doctor, wishing him a very prosperous year ahead, while people around him watch the scene with confusion. Finally, he exits the examination room, throwing his arms into the air and letting out a shout of joy. As he walks down the hallway, he starts replying to messages on his phone about his test and inviting a person he's chatting with to hang out. Sometime later in the late afternoon of that day, our boy is whistling a tune while waiting inside a cafe that looks a lot like Starbucks. Still filled with happiness, he keeps thinking about how the world is such an amazing place until something catches his attention. He notices that the red-haired girl is passing by on the street. This makes him quite irritated as the girl shows not even a hint of humility. As her group passes by, he observes the weapons of the adventurers with her and how they shine elegantly. He keeps admiring those weapons while thinking to himself when a hand suddenly approaches his back from behind. A boy with glasses startles him by shouting and calling him brother while giving him a shove. He follows that up by asking how the test went. Our boy says the test went incredibly well and asks what they like to eat, with his brother saying he wants pork belly. Said and done, they ordered the super elegant and decorated dish. With determination, the protagonist says he's offering this out of the kindness of his heart and generosity. So if they don't eat it, he will. As he keeps praising the appearance and taste of the food, Jay looks at the dish, mesmerized as the aroma fills the place. Finally, he asks if the protagonist wouldn't like to work in a renowned restaurant, but is interrupted by the protagonist telling him to just eat already. Our hero begins threatening his companion, telling him to be quiet and stop joking, while a boy with glasses teases him, saying this is an attempt at lobbying. Suddenly, door opens with the bell ringing. The red-haired girl's group enters the place with everyone accompanying her. They are immediately attended to and given a table for 5 adults, while the protagonist gets extremely irritated by what just happened. The girl draws our hero's attention, greeting him and saying they are meeting again. Before he can respond, she turns to her companion Yubai and says that this was the one who said he'd chew her up. Hearing this provocation, Yubai introduces herself with a surprised expression while our boy also introduces himself somewhat awkwardly. Semen wonders in his mind if that girl is the one with the 30,000 aura. After the introductions, the group starts to walk away, but the protagonist asks them to wait a moment as he calls out to Sion because she had mentioned a bet he was supposedly involved in, but irritated, he insists he never agreed to it. Later that night, the protagonist's friends are thanking him for the meal as they walk down the street. Jimin asks who those girls were that talked to Seaman earlier, adding that they were very beautiful. But the boy simply says not to judge people by their appearance. Next, he jumps on his friends and tells them to choose their friendships wisely while inviting them to karaoke for a second round. While they are walking happily, he suddenly feels something strange, a terrifying pressure that makes him lose his composure. Instantly, he looks back to see what happened, noticing cracks in the air. His friend with glasses asks what's going wrong. Our hero forcefully calls out his friends' names. Then he hugs them and pushes them firmly, telling them to run away as fast as they can. In his thoughts, he adds that he has a very bad feeling. He remembers the day when a portal opened in front of him and tells his friends that it's the same, that a portal is about to open, something his friends don't understand. Suddenly, he yells at Park saying that a portal is about to open. A loud boom is heard as a black and red portal begins to open. This portal grows larger and larger while everyone stares in its direction, and from within the portal emerges a monster resembling a furious dragon with several red eyes in the background. Finally, Simon exclaims the name Sinchus. Hostile monster number 22, Sinchus, appears roaring while leaving everyone stunned and frozen in place. Its roar is so powerful that it begins to shatter the windows all around from the impact wave, and the terrified people start fleeing the area quickly as if their lives depended on it, and they really do. However, Semen was so stunned by the scene that his body couldn't even move. Shinha's group arrives without wasting any time, ordering everyone to evacuate and stepping in to handle the situation. Shin orders Yubai to take charge of escorting the rescue team just before the battle begins. As the fight starts, we are given an explanation of what this group is, the Iron Horse Company. This association is not among the top 3, but it is known for its small elite unit. The battle begins with Sinka striking the group's tank with its tail, the tank blocking with his shield. Cian charges forward while slicing at the monster's tail as she runs toward it. However, before she can finish a strike, she notices something. More monsters begin to emerge from the portal. Dangerous Monsters Identification Number 8, Jorg. Huge, tooth-filled dogs exit the portal. They ignore the swordswoman running right past her. In desperation, the warrior yells for someone to stop the attack, but it's already too late. One of the monsters bites down on a civilian's arm, making him scream in pain while crying out for help. Our protagonist watches this from a distance, shocked and frozen. He says in his thoughts that he should take action and help the civilian, reflecting that he trained for years for a moment like this. He ends his thought by shouting internally for his body to move, but surprisingly, it's J.A. who attacks the monster. With strong determination in his eyes, Park strikes the canine with a wooden plank, knocking the monster away. However, the monster only becomes more enraged and prepares to charge again. The dog lunges once more at the boy, who uses the piece of wood to defend himself while the protagonist watches in the background. In his observations, he notices that even though Jay had no training, he still fought masterfully in that battle. He finishes his thought by calling him a genius, just as Park kicks the monster. More monsters appear to attack him while the protagonist continues watching, reflecting that his friend could become a great invader. But then one of the dogs manages to reach him, biting his shoulder brutally. Park falls to the ground, his arm taken by the beast. Seeing this scene finally pushes our hero to take action, rushing toward his friend. The dog stares down the boy while holding Park's arm in its mouth. This sends Sion into total fury, screaming for her teammate while her aura seems to surge. She runs toward the monster preparing a punch, but suddenly a spear passes by from behind her, striking the monster before it can reach her. An invader in the background asks if Sin is okay, and she confirms she is, but yells that her friend is seriously injured. Our protagonist picks up his friend in his arms, pleading for him to hang in there, and his friend quickly replies that this isn't his time yet. The rescue group quickly rushes to assist Jack. Right after, our protagonist swiftly applies a bandage to what's left of his arm. He looks at his friend with extreme concern, reflecting that he uses aura to stop the bleeding, but that the situation was far from favorable. The monsters nearby take advantage of this moment to quietly approach the boys, but Sin from behind screams with rage, drawing the monsters toward her. Her aura echoes down the entire street, catching the attention of all the canines. One of her teammates asks if she's okay, to which the woman simply replies that she's fine and that the monster is too fast for something so large. She adds that she's trying to hit a vital point, but that it's difficult to reach the monster's head. Her teammate says that the Guani rescue group has arrived, so they could try attacking together and finish the monster. And no sooner said than done, the monster is caught off guard by the simultaneous attacks. Without wasting time, the redhead and her group already position themselves to strike. Centimeters jumps across shops and signboards to gain more altitude. She finishes by leaping directly at the monster from above to attack it from the air. She prepares a solid thrust with her ninjato imbued with aura, and as she delivers her blow, she shouts for the monster to just fall and leave this world. She pierces its head in a devastating strike that causes a massive shockwave, slamming it to the ground. The monster mutters while staggering after the blow, but in the end, it collapses onto the cracked ground and slowly fades away. Sinchus is no longer moving, and one of the invaders thanks everyone for their work while another calls for the healing team. The portal begins to close, only 10 seconds remain until it's all over. But something bothers our protagonist who keeps staring at the portal, thinking it feels like something is still there. And there really was a huge humanoid monster with massive fangs. Our hero stares in fear at the scene because what's in front of him is an orc. The portal, which should have been closed, remained open. Our hero keeps staring at it, terrified. From inside the portal, the creature continues staring at them. His injured friend calls out in pain, saying Hyun. Semin immediately responds, calling out to his friend and asking if he's okay. But his friend is only worried about the civilian. Our hero confirms to his friend that thanks to him, the man is safe. Jay adds that he didn't ask for that, but in the end, he turned out to be a good invader. A bit saddened, our protagonist simply agrees with those words while holding his friend in his arms. Looking at him with a gentle expression, he confirms once again, Inji was absolutely right. He did a good job. The next morning, our protagonist is running a marathon while reflecting on what happened. The damage to the city had been restored, and everyone returned to their normal lives. However, fighting monsters is much harder than expected. If help hadn't arrived, it would have been the end for everyone. The boy spends the entire day training, and now at night, he's at the gym lifting weights. He starts to intensify his workout while remembering what happened and the damage that monster caused to his friend. A mustached man enters the gym and says it's already time to go home. The protagonist puts the weights back in place and asks what time it is now. The man simply repeats his name, Seaman, while taking a deep breath and asking if he'd like to go out for a drink with him. Now another place at a street shop. They are drinking together as the man apologizes for what happened to Gun Ninja. Seven asks the man if he knew that he was an awakened, which the director confirms he already knew. Our hero continues. He says that even though he was awakened, at that moment when he should have acted, he just stood there and he gowns another shot while the director just listens silently. Our protagonist goes on to say that because of his hesitation, his friend ended up in that condition. In the end, he asked the director if it's okay for someone like him to become an invader. The boy looks down, ashamed, while the man just watches him in silence. To break the ice, the director says he used to be a boxer before opening the gym, which surprises the boy. The man gets a little annoyed and tells him not to look at him like that. When he was younger, he was really strong and fast. Seaman says the director must have been a great fighter. The mustached man laughs loudly and says he wasn't joking. But the fact that he wasn't joking, that was the real problem. He begins recalling his past, saying he had a rival who was like a brother to him. But that rival fell and never got up again after a fight they had. After that event, he was never able to step into a ring again. Finishing his story, he asks the protagonist if he knows why he's telling him all this. The boy questions the reason, and the older man simply adds that he told the story so Seaman doesn't become someone mediocre. Bombarding the boy with questions, the man keeps firing words, asking if Seaman is just going to stand around crying and do nothing. The boy tries to reject the statements, but is interrupted by the director, saying there's no such thing as a perfect human being. In fact, he himself couldn't continue his career after seeing his opponent on the ground, but all humans make mistakes. And in the end, everyone tries to fix their flaws. But, of course, that's just as terrifying. But in the end, fear doesn't matter because no matter what has happened or will happen, you must keep moving forward. They both toast their shots at the end of the monologue. And finally, a man asked Seaman if he thinks he could beat him in a fight, with the protagonist laughing and saying he thinks the old man would win. The old man, excited, says that compared to today, his younger self was super scrawny and weak. But he adds that even so, if he fights the boy today, he might lose because of his age. But in the end, he's still stronger than an average human, finishing his speech by saying he believes Seaman will become a great man in the future. Seaman drinks his last shot and firmly states that, yes, he agrees with the old man. The next day, in another place called Tarsing Academy, our protagonist was training in virtual reality with the help of his instructor. He was currently repeating combat simulations against Zorgs, the same night wolf from his trauma. And it was clear how determined he was to do well in his training, with his aura filling his sword. Next, the virtual wolf appears in front of him, and without wasting time, it charges at the hero. But he instantly defends himself, using his sword to block the canine's jaws. He ends the combat with a swift circular movement that slices the monster in half. The monster begins dissolving into the air while the protagonist starts to relax his body, reflecting in thought that the monster was far too weak. And his trainer yells at him saying that Seaman should not give in to fear or anger, then asks him if he wants to continue, to which the hero simply confirms, ending his statement by saying that this time, he wants to fight Hycinkus. The virtual monster is deconstructed in front of him. A gigantic dragon wolf now stares at him directly. Seaman raids himself with his sword while facing the monster towering above him. He then charges forward with violent force toward the creature, and delivers a circular strike to its front leg. Upon receiving the blow, the monster instantly regenerates and tries to strike the protagonist with its tail, but he ducks to avoid it. He rises quickly, gripping his sword in a defensive stance. The monster charges at him with one of its paws trying to crush him, but again, the boy dodges. Unifying form and will, Shin Yukon, a martial art that flows with the mind. Sen advances with his sword glowing against the wolf and delivers a precise strike to the creature's neck, with a massive aura radiating from the slash. Sinkus howls in pain as he watches while the protagonist finishes his attack. With the monster defeated, Seaman reflects in thought that the more he trains, the more he reacts purely by reflex. He takes a deep breath for a moment while beginning to recall the day when all happened and reflects that everything could have been different if he had taken action, regretting not being able to turn back time. Sinkus is summoned again, this time in the second stage of the simulation. The monster, even bigger and stronger, roars at the protagonist who does not flinch and already prepares for another battle. We fast forward in time to the day of the second test. Now present at the Colosseum for another trial, our protagonist is wearing a uniform similar to a police uniform in the middle of the crowd. One of the staff members asks what kind of weapon the boy will use, and he requests a sword. But when he grabs the wooden sword, he reflects in thought that it's poorly made even for training purposes. Around him, it's said that there's an immortal present, someone with a platinum mark, Lee Yoon, who's overseeing the exam. At the Colosseum microphone, a classy man with glasses begins his speech congratulating those who passed the first test and explaining the second. Now the test will be a rescue scenario. The equipment of those present has sensors that will disqualify them if they receive a fatal hit. The rules are simple. Defeat as many opponents as possible and be the last one standing. After signing the contract, all that's left is to enter the testing area. In the end, he wishes everyone good luck. The massive gate opens, revealing the sun outside, a vast, sunny park filled with trees. Only 5 minutes remain before everything begins. During that time, everyone is free to choose a place to stay. The game begins and the protagonist simply stands still in the same spot. One of the extras asks him what he's doing just standing there. Seaman remains silent, just wondering if that man was thinking the same thing as him, just standing still and observing. But the man simply says he'll have to fight first. However, before he can finish his sentence, our protagonist already strikes him with a vertical downward slash, one that gets blocked. His opponent tries to counter with a horizontal circular strike while calling him impatient, but the attack is dodged. The fight between the two intensifies as the spearman strikes repeatedly, taking advantage of his reach. He was already celebrating victory, but before he realizes it, one of his strikes is deflected by the sword. The hero captures the opponent's spear using the mother guard of his bladed weapon. And just as his opponent begins to taunt him, he drops his weapon and charges at his opponent, grabbing the man's face with the palm of his hand. Our boy already prepares a punch against the spearman, who questions why the protagonist threw away his weapon. A loud bang echoes through the air, and an announcement is made to all players. -222 has been disqualified. Player number 13 has achieved the first kill of the event and will receive bonus points for the first victory. Siam picks up his sword again and begins walking through the area. Meanwhile, the evaluators are watching everything through the cameras, commenting on the first kill. Upon hearing that player 222 is defeated, a member of the Hosen company is surprised by the news. He reflects in disbelief, wondering how someone could have defeated that specific player. Another man present from the Renegades faction says he heard about a new member in the Iron Horse this year. Then another in the viewing booth from the Infinite Society says he heard about someone with an aura over 30,000. Seaman is also there and says that person is very enthusiastic. Reflecting further, she thinks he seems very optimistic and that she believes is someone she can trust. Several fighters fall one after another. Fighters 185, 89, and 77 all fall around someone with long hair. Player 172, 3 consecutive kills. This player is Yubai. The greatest martial artist of all time, the celestial demon Daiko Chima, once said that fighting using your aura means subjugating your enemy's entire universe to your favor, fighting monsters on a completely different level than hunting animals with firearms. Because in battles against monsters, you must stab through your own life and your own world. That's what it means to battle between invaders. With a single blow, the protagonist sends both players flying with extreme ease. Player number 156 and player number 66 are now out of combat. Watching from the booth, the members present praise the hero's speed. As they wonder where he came from, the man in the dark suit asks if he would be a good candidate for the Wuluk Association. The redhead jumps up from her chair in shock. One of the men present asks if she knows who he is, and Seaman shouts that, yes, she knows him. Back in the game, we see one of the participants terrified while holding his sword. Yubai charges at him at extreme speed, wielding her weapon, and strikes him with a precise thrust to the chest. She takes a deep breath after defeating her opponent. Another player, number 27, is now on a combat. The girl reflects and thought about who her next opponent might be, until she hears something in the background that catches her attention. And when she turns around, she's face to face with the protagonist. She tries to remember who he is, recalling the day of the wolf attack, remembering that he was just trembling with fear and couldn't do anything. The hero looks at her with a very serious expression, and she gives him a smile, saying it's been a while since they've seen each other. As she watches Seaman, she reflects that he was the one who made the bet with Sion and calls him insignificant. But she notices the number of kills he's made, wondering if he might be that type of person. Someone with a very high skill level, but who's terrified of monsters. She finishes her thought and calls him to fight. She prepares a horizontal swing with her sword, and with a quick leg sweep, she tries to slash the boy's face. Seaman is surprised by such speed and reflects that apparently, it wasn't just the girl's aura that had great value. With steps similar to a dance, she spins and prepares another strike against the hero, who raises his sword to defend himself. The blow makes a loud noise and sends Seaman flying backward. Without wasting time, he kicks the protagonist, who blocks it with his arms. A few seconds pass as both fighters stick to each other down. The girl begins to reflect on the events of the fight. Even after being kicked, Seaman countered her with his sword while defending himself, and Yu reflects that his skills surpass hers. The woman touches her injured chin with her thumb while showing a faint smile. She begins untying her hair while reflecting that seeing people like him makes her feel very uneasy. When she finishes untying her hair, Yubai's aura looks like it's about to explode, and the protagonist watches in awe. That woman had the aura of a monster. Then we are taken to an explanation about the sword of Phukma, which means to subjugate. This causes someone or something to yield to it. But at the same time, that sword contains a demon. The one who wields it may become corrupted and submit to it. The girl calmly prepares her next attack. Meanwhile, the hero reflects that hers is an extraordinary aura, and he has no idea how someone can emit such power like a monster. But as he stares at her, he reflects that, yes, he was very scared on the day of the monster attack. By taking a step forward, he finishes his thought while facing his opponent with determination. He positions his sword toward her and prepares his aura for battle. The girl says to Seaman that he looks different from the boy she saw last time, and our hero cynically replies that he adapts easily to situations, finishing by saying that he can't just run away again. They both stare at each other, stemming the seriousness and Yobai with superiority and malice, face to face in a final moment after the dialogue. And the first offensive move comes from Yobai, who charges quickly at the protagonist. He grips his sword tightly while gritting his teeth, preparing for impact. But before anything begins, time runs out. They were about to clash blades, but the timer ends just in time. This surprises both fighters who didn't expect that resolution. The loudspeakers continue explaining the end of the exam while both Seaman and Yubai fall to the ground listening to the voices. In his thoughts, our protagonist sighs that you managed to survive. In another location, everyone is instructed to head to the indicated place. Now comes the final evaluation with a different format. The best players from rounds 1 and 2 won't get much rest. This is the twist of the exam. In front of the protagonist, he sees only a piece of paper and a pen, not understanding what kind of test he's facing now. This year, the final test will be an essay, which surprises everyone. The evaluator tells everyone to remain seated as moving will result in disqualification. The test is based on answering the current question in 5,000 characters or less. The question is, why do you want to become an invader, and what is the mission of an invader to you? Whispers begin to spread through the room, but honestly, it feels like those elementary school questions. But while reflecting in thought, our boy deduces that the catch is being generic and the answer will disqualify you. When all of this started, he was obsessed with becoming an invader to bring justice. He begins to remember his past while thinking about what he will write, remembering how his friends were beaten, reflecting that when he made the decision to become an invader, he thought he was doing the right thing. Since the weak are always left behind, he reflects on being an orphan, and that over time, he realized he had been abandoned, now adopted by his current guardians. His new parents, those who answered his call, those who didn't need to say a single word for him to feel loved. He remembers his parents' words about who he wanted to become and about how everyone in the world has a purpose, adding that finding him was their purpose. They didn't need to say anything more complex for him to understand the message. After hearing the news that his biological mother had passed away, he believes they were saying those things because of that. His parents tell him not to push himself too hard in training and to take care of himself, something the protagonist simply agrees with. Then his father tells his son to stay strong in his name. When asked that C means world and minute means people, become an invader to protect the people, Seaman, his father finishes his advice while his son watches him in admiration. Then Seaman finishes by thanking them for raising him as he bows to them. With 5 minutes remaining before the final deadline, the boy asks himself once more why he wants to become an invader, and what is the mission of an invader to him. Hyenas fight monsters and the only way to win is with their aura. Why did he receive this power, and why did he feel so connected to it? He questions these words while remembering the day he received the calling, saying that he wasn't a coward. To protect the world in peace, that was his reason, he concludes as he remembers his friend in his arms and his trainer. That's why he became invader. The exam ends and a few days pass. Now we are at the hospital seeing the protagonist open a door. This was the room of his friend Jay, who was reading at that moment. He asked his friend if he's doing okay, and the latter simply replies that the book was pretty cool and asks if Seaman would like to read it. But the hero just says he's not really into that kind of reading. He then asks when Jay will be discharged, but his friend replies that it will be a while and that he plans to take the opportunity to study. Seaman is surprised by that statement, and his friend gets irritated, saying that even if it doesn't seem like it, he's not that smart. Park asks if Seaman knows what a quadratic formula is, and the protagonist answers that he doesn't. Just as a fun fact, this formula is called Bhaskara's formula here in Brazil. After hearing his friend's response, Jay laughs a lot and says Seaman is worse than he is. Seaman stays silent, looking at his friend as if grateful to see him well. But he breaks the silence, calling him by name, and adds that he will heal his arm, though it might take a while. His friend replies that he believes in him and that one day he'll become a firefighter. This statement surprises the protagonist who questions the idea, but his friend just adds that firefighters are just as incredible as invaders. As he ruffles his friend's hair, our hero says goodbye, and Jay, with a smile on his face, says goodbye as well. But before the boy can leave, his friend asks when they'll see each other again, and the protagonist replies that probably in 2 years and asks Jay to stay strong because he'll come back, finishing by firmly asking if he understood the message. Outside, our hero laments about the 2 years of youth he's going to lose, shouting to the skies that this is the purest tyranny of the state. Then we are reminded of the Immortal Unit, a special unit made up of those who failed the test. We are then introduced to their trainer calling out to them. He says that each person uses a specific weapon and asks if the protagonist thinks the state would provide every single one of them. At the weapon shop, the protagonist looks pretty down as he opens the door. A clerk greets him, and he just grumbles that he's in a hurry. The blonde guy asks if the hero is enlisting, which annoys him. Then the clerk asks what kind of weapon the boy is looking for, and he says he's looking for a claymore. The clerk says that this type of weapon has a deep style. Since it's a symbol of two-handed swords, they have a large selection. He continues talking about it, saying that the claymore is a weapon with a rich history, similar to katanas and zweihanders. He adds that Iron Heart makes some really good ones, but the price is too high for casual use. And he finishes by stating that when it comes to two-handed swords, focusing too much on style can be risky, as he hands one over for the protagonist to test. The boy takes the sword in his hands and starts swinging it to test it. Excited, the seller says he knew the hero would recognize the value of that weapon, claiming that even though it was made by a small organization, it was very good. Seaman ends up buying that sword anyway. While the seller thanks him, our hero leaves, really irritated with that man who kept talking to him and didn't even get a thank you. He walks away telling himself that he's a real man and that he'll give it his all to make everything work. And since he was born a man, he has a lot of work to do. In another location near the DMZ, a man appears complaining about certain individuals. This man is Yun Wu-jae, part of the immortal unit belonging to the Shield Battalion units. He goes on saying that sometimes fools like them show up, and ends by asking the hero if he's ever seen a soldier buy weapons before enlisting, with the boy apologizing. The man asks who told him to do that, and the boy sheepishly says that the people around him told him to. Our boy laments in his thoughts that those people tricked him. Yo-mi asks the man beside him, Gil-hoon, what he thinks about the situation. Gil says he'll make sure the one in front of them becomes a proper person. Then he calls the protagonist's attention by calling him a rookie. Finally, he tells him to follow. Two of them go together to what appears to be a convenience store. He ends by saying that the corporation is only being tough on him because he's a new recruit, but is not sure if Seaman will recover his sword. Yol asks what the boy would like to eat, and he responds by saying he wants a chocolate pie. Since that wasn't a place for that kind of thing, the soldier just tells him to eat properly and provides him with a full meal. The protagonist reflects in his thoughts about those present and says it's very different from a regular military unit and that it doesn't seem like he'll be trolled. Gil asks Lee if he knows what kind of place he is in, and the boy replies that he doesn't know. Informing him about the place, the soldier says that people think it's just a place where those who failed the test go, the hero asking if that's not true. Gil, after hearing that, hesitates a bit before telling the truth and asks if the boy knows what happens if an invader fails to defeat a monster. The protagonist tries to say that an event would happen, but is interrupted by the soldier asking what kind of event that would be. Now more thoughtful, the boy continues saying he heard that in the past, some kind of event used to occur. Why the invader's system wasn't well developed. Nowadays, when people talk about portals, they think of dangerous dimensions or kinds of mines. But what happens if the invaders fail to stop the portals? Lee wonders in his mind. Finally, the soldier asks if he has finished eating. The protagonist says there's still a bit left. But the soldier adds that it's happening right now. They go outside, and the soldier with several high jumps positions himself above an observation point, which impresses Seaman due to Gil's incredible agility. Already at the top, he tells the boy to climb up to the place, which is obeyed with the protagonist also climbing, apparently with a single jump, something that impresses the soldier who praises the boy. He asks if Lee can see the forest in front of him. The northern part of the DMZ is soaked with monsters. He says it's like hell on earth, but we see various monsters fighting each other in that area. Our protagonist is speechless, just observing the place. The soldier finishes by saying they exist to prepare for the worst. Gil asks if Lee is scared, a statement that is denied. Our boy keeps thinking about everything that had happened and determined looking at the landscape of chaos before him, he affirms to himself and thought that now is the time to start from the beginning. The next day at 5 a.m., Lee's alarm clock rings and he gets up immediately. He leaves his room silently and heads to the hallway. Our protagonist salutes the immortal present there and he says that Seaman is quick as expected. He asks what Lee brought for breakfast that day and Seaman explains it to him with a huge list. Our boy gets water from the faucet and starts heading back to his room, mentally counting down. The bell rings and the protagonist opens the window shouting for everyone to wake up, and he asks once again for Sergeant Kim Hyun to get up, but is answered with murmurs. When our boy approaches offering him water and says once again to get up, saying that today the officer is First Lieutenant Han. Everyone in the dorm starts getting ready. Kim asks if everyone made their beds and is answered with confirmation, then he asks everyone to go now. In the courtyard, a shout for attention. The person in charge says that the expedition team will return today and that everyone must ensure they can rest, so they must stay alert. Gil asks if Seaman heard clearly about the squad leader returning and his answer with confirmation. But then the boy asks what this so-called expedition is and the soldier answers that it's supposedly something in North Korea. Even though that's the classification, it's strange because North Korea has currently collapsed. There are currently only a few guardians protecting some cities, but they are at a complete disadvantage compared to the monsters. And as a result, South Korea, China, and Russia formed a defensive line to block the monsters. That's all they know about North Korea's support in protecting South Korea. That's what they call the expedition. But either way, Lee shouldn't make the surgeon grumpy because he wasn't a mediocre person. They return to the cafeteria while Gil asks what the boy wants to eat. Entering the place, the soldier cheerfully greets the surgeon for having returned, which the surgeon responds saying it's been a while. And he asks who is the one present with Gil saying he's just a new recruit. Surgeon John Woo says that if that's all, he needs to take a shower and then they should talk. He asks Gil to empty his bag for him. That backpack had a horrible smell and the protagonist asks if the soldier is going to wash it to deal with that until something falls from the bag, a monster's head. It was the creature classified as number 10, Emirat. The protagonist starts reflecting on it, saying that one would need a gold mark to be able to hunt one of those alone. Later, they meet with the surgeon again, who asks if anything different happened this time, and the soldier mentions Lee's weapon. He continues revealing more about his companion, giving details about how he brought a sword at the time of recruitment. The surgeon simply asks to see what sword is out of curiosity. And as said, the sword is shown to him. As he picks it up, he reads the inscriptions in silence. Then he says the word name. Gil, annoyed, asked Lee to just say his name already, and the boy yells embarrassed that his name is Seaman. The surgeon asks if he really liked that weapon, and a bit uncertain, the boy affirms that he does. Jian gives a very serious look to Seaman and asks again if that's true, because if it is, he should keep using that weapon. And he asked if Lee came to that place prepared to be an invader, which is confirmed with a yes. The surgeon says they'll talk more later after he rests, so he tells the boy to go do his job. He all strikes a pose while watching and asks Lee if he liked the surgeon, and the boy just hugs his sword, very happy, saying yes. Adding to that, the soldier says the surgeon doesn't smile much and asks where that weapon came from, with the protagonist saying it came from the Jioshan metal industry. Gil adds that the company belongs to Joan's father, with Lee asking in surprise if that's true. The protagonist asks if the surgeon is really that scary, and the soldier simply says that if he does his job right, everything will be fine. Lee says that really sounds like the army, and Jill asks if that's something to say. Later that day during sunset, everyone gathers in the courtyard once again. Calling Simon's attention, the officer shouts his name and is answered immediately. The officer orders Seaman to explain what Brucus is, and Lee answers that it's system number 23, Brucus, more commonly called Earth Pup. This monster uses its powerful teeth to bite, and it uses various strategies to succeed since it attacks in groups. And occasionally, another monster called Brucus Warrior appears. It is much larger and has far more powerful attacks, so there are debates about separating it under another identification number. The officer asks if the boy studied monsters while in society, but the boy shouts that is just a regular candidate. Around him, the soldiers say he's amazing and the best in the squad. Another question is asked by the officer, his time to Yoon. The question was about Brucus' weak point, and Yoon replies that it's the abdomen. He adds that Brucus has poor vision, so they must dodge it and strike at blind spots with strong, precise thrusts. Then the officer adds that if the strike comes from the side, the sword may bounce and fly off, so they must train thrusts starting now. The protagonist grabs his new sword with joy in his eyes, and he starts his training with various precise sword movements while moving around. In the end, he receives praise from all sides, being called a genius, but he reacts humbly and flattered until the alarm sounds. It's an alert and impending invasion. The Brucus are attacking. Now everyone runs to their positions, with the officer encouraging everyone to face the monsters. An explosion is seen in the distant forest. Our protagonist begins entering the forest saying that the Earth Pup stepped on a landmine. Was running with determination until something surprises him. In front of him stood a gigantic army of Brucus. The soldiers are prepared in position to face them, and the attack begins with the sergeant throwing his spear that hits one of the insects dead on. Declaring himself a general of the Republic of Korea, someone far greater than those bugs, Gul tells Seaman to stay behind him, and suddenly, one of the monsters appears behind him to attack. But that creature is instantly struck right in the chest by a precise thrust from Gul. After that scene, our hero becomes even more alert and ready for battle, and he also lands a precise strike on another creature that charges at him. With the soldier praising him, both were covering each other's backs. However, even with this apparent advantage, the monsters kept coming more and more. We hear a scream in the background from the officer, who falls to the ground. There stood a Brucus warrior, a gigantic insect with red eyes staring at the soldier. The squad starts to panic, shouting that they need to hurry and help their leader. But everyone was too busy fighting their own battles, unable to find an opening to assist their officer. That officer is then grabbed by the creature while screaming in pain. This sight deeply affects our protagonist, who begins to remember his trauma from that night. The Maga's friend lost his arm. The protagonist grips his sword tightly, and his aura flows through it until he leaves his post and goes straight to rescue the officer, with Gul shouting his name. The officer was about to be crushed by the creature, but our hero blocks the attack with his sword. As he looks at the creature, he reflects in thought that even if the one in front of him is much bigger and stronger, it doesn't make a difference. It's all it takes to find the weak point and finish it. He prepares his sword, bursting with aura as he swings it, saying that it's time to face strength, even greater strength. He charges at the monster and slashes the side of its body with a horizontal strike. A single blow was enough. The creature falls to the ground while everyone watches the scene in shock. The protagonist, still standing, remains firm, waiting for the next monster's attack. Monsters that waste no time and immediately focus their attacks on him. The hero gives a small smile as he calls those monsters insignificant, and ends by shouting a war cry, calling them to face him as he calls them simple little sand pups. Some time passes, and now in the morning of the next day, all the monsters are finally gone. Stemmon collapses to the ground from exhaustion until Gul calls out to him. His companion says he did a great job, but that he needs to ask him something serious, asking if he really failed the test to become an invader. The boy ends up saying he failed during the rehearsal stage, something that surprises the soldier because he didn't know that. The protagonist just changes the subject, offering some water to his companion, water in a container full of dirt. The soldier asks him to clean it, but the boy just says he should throw some water in it, and Gio responds angrily that it's fine while cursing at Lee. The next day, rumors spread about a new recruit with amazing abilities. As usual, they ask Seaman what he'd like for breakfast that day. The boy reflects in thought about working hard so that one day he can become someone recognized until he's called. The surgeon asked the protagonist if he really wasn't doing everything possible to raise his reputation. He adds that he heard the reports about a boy who defeated the Brooker's warrior alone, with the hero responding by apologizing. The surgeon places one of his hands on the boy's shoulder, saying that it wasn't a bad thing. It was good news, and finishes by calling him to go outside with him for a while. Both are now outside with swords in hand. John Woo orders Lee to hold his sword in position and asks if the boy had fought a few times before, which the boy confirms. Then he says that will be enough for now. Without warning, he charges at the protagonist and orders him to try to defend against his attacks. The fight between them is extremely intense, with several blows being exchanged one after the other. The hero is in a very uncomfortable situation trying to keep up with all those simultaneous movements. The attacks were getting harder and harder to block as the protagonist kept stepping back and becoming desperate not to be hit. Reflecting in thought, he says that all the attacks were so precise and solid, as if his opponent had been practicing the same technique like a madman. After finishing his sequence, the surgeon says now it's time for Lee to attack first. Our hero asked about John's sword, and he simply says it came from the same company as Lee's, but from a more premium line. But he also adds that the protagonist's sword was also very good, combining the elegance and robustness of a claymore. And he finishes by praising the boy's choice, who thanks him and receives the response that he shouldn't thank. He should just keep using the sword. Both return to face each other in a frenzied combat, with the other soldiers watching from the background. Gil says excitedly that Lee is blocking the surgeon's attacks well. But soon after they move on, the hero reflects in thought that each movement has a beginning, a development, a turn, and a conclusion. But the surgeon's attacks were different. They ignored all stages and came straight at him in a single instant. He's on a completely different level from Yubai. A strike hits our protagonist directly, launching him backward as he concludes in thought that the surgeon's attacks are powerful on their own. About to hit the ground, he can no longer think of anything. His opponent gave no opening for anything. Later that same day during late afternoon, the training had ended with the surgeon saying good job to the boy. The protagonist, all beaten up, thanks the surgeon for the training while he asks if the boy believes he can become an invader one day. Something the protagonist says will certainly happen, with the surgeon adding that when he improves a bit more, he'll try again. The hero wonders in thought what that path might be. Then Lee asks John how he ended up being discharged, and the surgeon replies that he volunteered and didn't want to feel bad after being discarded, adding that his father felt ashamed because he failed the exam, with the protagonist asking how all of that happened. And John simply replies that it was like hell. The hero just remains silent for a few seconds after hearing that phrase, but he breaks the ice by asking why he chose North Korea among all places, and the general says it's for recognition reasons, adding that if the boy was curious, he could go take a look himself, saying that if he really is interested, he just has to go a little further from there. Lee begins to reflect on going to learn more about the mission of the one he admires, but is cut off by the surgeon telling him to stop with the nonsense. That same night, the soldiers were on guard observing the area, with one soldier asking Seaman what kind of creature that was that he was seeing. And Lee replies that it is beast number 11, Bucket, a creature of large and dangerous horns that, if they hit you, will make you rot. The soldier asks if the boy is planning to take the exam again after being discharged, which the hero confirms. Adding that he's thinking of simply leaving, the hero is surprised by this statement from his companion. He continues saying that if Seaman failed, how could he himself possibly pass? Something that Lee asked Staten why his companion thinks that way, adding that he always comes to that place thinking he'll just try one more time again and again, but being an invader is not the only path. The protagonist says that if he decides to change course in the future, there's nothing wrong with choosing another path. But something draws both their attention. They notice someone in the distance slowly approaching the area. Both are extremely surprised upon seeing that image. The superior orders Summon to go immediately and inform the unit about what's happening. The figure was approaching from the north, appearing to be a man around 20 years old. One of the monsters in the background notices that man. This frightens Lee, who tries to intervene, but Yu stops him because leaving the area without permission was strictly forbidden. The monster charges at the man in a violent attack. The soldiers watching the scene shout for him to run. But calmly, the man simply raises his hand toward the creature, showing a reddish aura. and with a simple effortless motion, he delivers a vorpal strike against the monster. Finishing his move, he asks for help while falling to the ground. The soldiers observe the scene in disbelief, not understanding what just happened. After that, nothing more is heard about that man. Some time passes and now during the day, Lee asks Yoon if the rumor about the creation of another development group is true, which the corporal confirms. And then he asks if the protagonist is thinking about volunteering, which the protagonist also confirms. Yoon suggests that Seaman not do it, saying that John is a special case because most who choose that path end up returning with injuries, adding that there are even some who don't come back at all. But the boy says he still wants to go. Yeol asks the protagonist why he wants it so badly. It's to become stronger, which the protagonist says is part of it, but that is also curious. Then Yoon stands up and asks Seaman to follow him. He touches a door in another location. He introduces himself to those present and apologizes for the interruption, saying he will return later. At that moment, the man in that room says it's alright and that he can say what the matter is, with the corporal stating it's about volunteer. The response in the first few seconds is silence, which is then broken by a question from the highest-ranking man present asking if it was really about a volunteer. With an intense gaze, the character asks if he was volunteering for an implantation team. The protagonist observes the man in front of him intrigued as he says he wants to volunteer together with Corporal Lee Seaman. At that moment, the superior questions their names while the soldiers present introduce themselves with serious disciplined posture in the room. The exchange of glances becomes strong and suspicious, creating palpable tension among those present. Touching his shoulder, the superior says the man seemed very confident and praises his posture. Turning his back, he welcomes him to the team, causing the protagonist to sigh in relief, relieved by the acceptance. Some cars travel along the highway with numerous troops on board. The soldiers talk about the motivations that led them to volunteer, sharing personal stories and experiences. Corporal Yoon sees no reason not to volunteer, firmly believing in the importance of his mission and duty. He was already at the point where he should be promoted to surgeon. Besides that, he had noticed that the new recruit seemed nice, and the boy beside him looked like a fun person. The more experienced soldier warns the recruit to take care of him in North Korea, threatening him. As the vehicle moves, a soldier criticizes the current army and another asks about the corporal's participation. A voice asks all of them to gather. First, the man expresses his immense gratitude to those who volunteered and begins giving the information about the destination, Kaishin in the South Pyongyang province. A soldier asks about the meeting with the North Koreans, but the officer responds that this information is confidential. The officer announces they will depart right after lunch while the soldiers respond with firmness and discipline. A soldier recognizes the man in front questioning if he is Major Kim Kyu-jin, the one responsible for the mission. The piercing gaze of Major Kim Kyu-jin causes discomfort, leaving the soldier uneasy and chilled by his intimidating presence. The scene shows the entrance to the DMZ, demilitarized zone surrounded by barbed wire, highlighting a sign that prohibits entry. The monsters are extremely sensitive to sound and smoke, suggesting that any carelessness could be fatal. Together, the soldiers advance through the forest carrying heavy backpacks. Two characters walk together while one of them questions the corporal, saying the place doesn't seem that threatening. The silence draws attention, making them suspect it was too quiet, not even a single sparrow in sight. As they march, the reflection arises about the reason for not encountering animals in the area. They conclude it's due to the massive number of monsters present. Taejikai, with glowing energy, seems restless since early on. A soldier calls for Corporal Yoon, holding his arm and asking him to pay attention to his surroundings. Looking down, he realized there was something at his feet. Without time to react, something exploded and the men were thrown away. Observing the scene, the others already knew it was a Stavon, a hostile beast, number 185, that hides underground and triggers explosions by releasing shock waves through its snout. The soldiers were thrown far away, launched by the force of the impact, unable to grab onto anything. One of them, in a moment of desperation, held onto his friend while trying to grip tightly onto the trunk of a tree. Corporal Yoon, with his impressive strength, managed to hold the boy and prevent him from being swept away by the current. Thanks to the captain's quick intervention, the two were safe and sound, far from the imminent danger surrounding them. Firmly holding their swords, the two warriors prepared to bravely fight the enemies. With determination and courage, the two began to fight, facing their opponents with skill and strategy without hesitation. Stadiums hide underground when they sense movement, so they should blend in with the smoke and look for an opportunity. The creature was sniffing the dense smoke surrounding it, unaware it was being attacked from behind. When it finally realized it was under attack, the creature became alarmed and tried to defend itself quickly. A precisely thrown grenade caused a massive explosion, scattering debris and smoke throughout the area. It was the perfect opportunity for the soldiers who were ready to act and attack the wounded creature. The soldiers, the courage, cut a piece of the creature, taking the chance to weaken it even further. The captain orders the soldier to take care of the rest of the beasts while he advances a little further. Next to a leafy tree, the man stands still, observing the whole scene with attention and apprehension. He states that he was afraid of dying that way, feeling the tension increasing with each moment. But his worried companion tried to calm him down in every way, using encouraging words and comforting gestures. A shimmering and intense light sets the character's entire body ablaze, creating an atmosphere of despair and chaos. Major Kim Kyu-jin, with his firm posture, displays triumphant smiles even in the face of the alarming situation at hand. Seeing that terrifying scene, the boy is startled, feeling his heart race in his chest. One of the soldiers, with a serious expression, is holding a suitcase in front of the officer, awaiting orders. Curious and restless, the protagonist already wants to know what's inside the mysterious suitcase being held. The sunlight shines intensely and radiates through the clouds, creating an impressive contrast in the sky. The atmosphere around them was thick with tension as everyone awaited the unfolding of the approaching events. The major congratulates his soldiers for the good works, stating that the 2 injured would return to the main unit. He emphasizes that beyond that point, return would be impossible. One of the men comments that it really looked like hell, while another says he heard that statums are extremely rare monsters. Despite everything, everyone enjoyed the experience and wanted to see what awaited them ahead. At the end of day 1, the 2 injured returned to the main unit. In 3 days, the men faced 5 battles and many injuries. Then the leader raises his hand, ordering the group to stop immediately, and his serious expression conveys warning and authority. The leader instructs them to wait at the location as the soldiers position themselves alert and awaiting instructions. A soldier warns them not to stray too far. 2 soldiers complain, and one of them comments that the leader explains nothing, while another says they are just numbers in the mission. The soldiers appear in an energized view, highlighting a strong green glow emanating from one of them, drawing attention. 2 soldiers discuss the flow of Kai, noticing that it increases as they advance further north. A soldier steps carefully on the ground while observing the surroundings intrigue. He seems to have heard a suspicious noise that caught his attention and put him on alert. Realizing something was moving quickly, he tensed up and began to prepare. And it was coming his direction with impressive speed, making his heart race with adrenaline. He announces that the beasts are approaching, warning everyone of the imminent danger. All the soldiers become frightened by that information and take up defensive positions. Holding his sword, he asked the monsters to come closer, showing no fear in his expression. But one approaches them didn't resemble ferocious creatures at all, surprising the soldiers. The North Korean troops encountered the South Korean troops, creating immediate tension in the air. The soldiers become frightened upon realizing they weren't beasts, but humans like them. The change in the monster's habitat caused more beasts to emerge in that area, further complicating the situation. The captain, sensing the tension, begins to shift the topic to something lighter and more relaxed. And Major Kim Kyu-jin asked the soldier to approach with the silver suitcase. It was a large silver suitcase that seemed to contain something important and mysterious inside. The character's gaze is intense, reflecting her curiosity and concern with the current situation. From a distance, the soldier observes that conversation, paying attention to every movement and word exchange between them, while his impatient companion tells him to mind his own business and not interfere. They go back to talking about the confusion that occurred over the appearance of the beasts and that mistakes were common. He questions whether the surgeon wasn't curious about something that involved their own lives, but he didn't want to risk his life. He thought it was easier to play blind to some of life's complicated and uncomfortable situations. Thoughtful and reflective, the young man agrees with that statement considering the implications of his words. The troops keep marching man after man, advancing with determination toward their destination. The previous group returned safely, relieved to have completed the mission without incidents. However, some comrades ended up dying along the way, leaving a feeling of sadness and loss among everyone. With a serious expression, the commander asked them to stop for a second and listen to his instructions. To place a detonator in that strategic location that could change the course of the current situation, the officer mentions changes in the monster's habitat, warning about terrifying creatures that have settled in. The other soldier tries to remember the name of the creatures, mentioning something like kinensis that appear in groups. With a confident smile, the soldiers suggest that the officer check it out personally if he doesn't believe his words. The officer maintains a serious and suspicious gaze while the other man smiles enigmatically and provocatively. The troops noticed that the leader had stopped walking, drawing everyone's attention. Because of the distance, they couldn't understand what they were discussing, but the tension was palpable. They only heard the word kinensis, which had something to do with carnivorous plants. They looked like roses, but they weren't real plants. They attacked people who passed nearby. The man realizes how well informed the young man is and praises him. Curious, he asked the boy's name after noticing he didn't have a visible identification tag. The soldier apologizes and asks if the officer came from Gakshan to receive them, receiving a friendly reply. With a smile, he suggests everyone introduce themselves, starting with his name, Lee Seaman. The man questions the need for introductions since they will be parting ways soon. Reinforcing his indifference, the officer says that since they'll soon be separating, there's no point in introducing themselves. Suddenly, something attacks the character with enormous speed. Everyone is extremely shocked and frightened by the scene. It was the beast named Kanenzas, classification number 94, which had just devoured the officer. The situation worsened as they realized there were numerous carnivorous plants around them. Furious, the major moves toward the commander. Laughing, the man no longer cared about anything, stating that he had been wrong about his previous assumptions. The expression on the major's face was terrifying, showing malice in his eyes and making the soldiers uneasy. The commander points to the location, stating that the monster's den wasn't over there, but right here, revealing a new threat. The troops needed to retreat immediately. Another soldier with a focused and determined gaze is praised for his agility. The man with a threatening expression declares that he won't allow the other to leave peacefully. Surrounded by a glowing blue aura, the hero grips his sword tightly, prepare for the imminent confrontation. The creatures attacked anyone who moved without distinction, causing panic and despair among those present. Determined, the soldiers tried to defend themselves bravely using their weapons and combat strategies. Lie on the ground, a soldier watches in surprise and thinks about a joint attack with a beast. Another, moving quickly, mentally questions the absurd situation and wonders if it makes any sense. Amidst the smoke and chaos, he screams in concern for Corporal Yoon Woo-jae and tries to find him. Corporal Yoon Woo-jae appears holding another soldier and responds loudly as the battle continues in the background. Looking intently at the young man, he orders someone to flee immediately to save his own life. A massive explosion suddenly occurs, creating a roar that echoes throughout the surrounding area. Everyone is thrown far away with immense brutality, launched like dolls by the devastating impact. The man screams in fury at Kim Kyujin for hurting the chief and not thinking of the consequences. Kim Kyujin charges forward quickly, responding in anger and calling him a damn useless piece of trash. The two clash violently with fast and intense blows as the force of the impact creates gusts of wind around them. Laughing, the man says his enemy is dumber than he thought. A beam of intense blue light shoots from his eye, immediately surprising and destabilizing the enemy, which leaves the enemy worried and unresponsive, paralyzed by the force of the piercing powerful gaze. The whirlwind created by the major is capable of launching the commander high into the air, defying gravity with ease. But as soon as he lands back on the ground, he returns with a counter-attack full of determination and agility. Asking not to be underestimated, the soldier throws his knife with precision toward the enemy. The knife hits directly in the major's chest, causing a strong impact and throwing him backward. The blow makes the major spit blood from his mouth, showing the seriousness of the injury. Meanwhile, the creature approaches dangerously toward the major's body, ready to attack with its sharp fangs. The creature tries to swallow the major with its fangs, but the soldier reacts quickly to stop the attack. Demonstrating his strength, the soldier unleashes his power with intensity, driving the creature away and protecting the wounded major. Now the soldier is filled with even greater rage, determined to finish off his enemies. His determination grows and he prepares to face any threat that arises without hesitation in his mission. The situation is so dire that the major appears to have completely lost his mind amidst the chaos. The soldier tells Corporal Yoon that he will create an opening and asks him to follow, determined to push forward. With his sword, he cuts a path fearlessly, slashing through the vegetation and facing any obstacle. It seemed like the perfect chance to escape, but the danger around them was still immense. He desperately shouts for Corporal Yoon, trying to get his attention as the situation becomes more critical. Corporal Yoon was lying on the ground, injured and vulnerable, unable to get out on his own at that moment. Meanwhile, more enemy soldiers were quickly approaching, making the situation even more dangerous and tense. The protagonist realized they needed to escape at all costs, but knew it wouldn't be an easy task. Despite the danger, he wasn't a coward and was determined to face any challenge that came his way. With determination, he lit up his entire body with a bright blue energy, increasing his strength and confidence. His eyes took on an intimidating and frightening tone, reflecting his courage and the intensity of his determination. Gripping his sword tightly, he returned to help his companion, determined to protect him at all costs, and he defended the corporal from an imminent attack, eliminating the threats. Seven patiently waited for the man to stand, showing his determination to keep fighting alongside him. They couldn't give up, so Seaman supported the corporal on his shoulder and began to carry him. Their main goal was to survive and return safely to report everything about that hellish place. They wanted to tell everyone about the true hell they had faced and the horrors of that hostile environment. Meanwhile, a soldier grabbed a grenade, ready to throw it at the men who were fleeing quickly. Seaman noticed the soldier's action and was completely shocked by the gravity of the situation they were facing. He tried to run faster carrying the corporal as the grenade dangerously approached in a direction. The explosion was inevitable and occurred, spreading destruction and chaos all around that battlefield. At that moment, dense smoke spread everywhere, making visibility difficult, increasing the tension among the soldiers. The men fell to the ground, exhausted and injured, while the environment around remained covered in dust and smoke. Even so, Seaman still held his sword tightly, determined to keep fighting and protect those at his side. He noticed the enemy approaching, surprised to see that the boy was still alive. Realizing that the enemy was hard to kill, he began carefully preparing the next powerful strike. However, the boy was already on his feet, ready to continue the fight with unshakable determination. An intense energy enveloped his body, glowing brightly as he prepared to unleash a decisive attack. With just a single devastating strike, he managed to defeat his enemy, ending the battle in that moment. Seaman, exhausted after the intense fight, knew he would emerge victorious despite the deep fatigue he felt. The young man's eyes slowly opened, revealing his confusion as he looked around at what was happening. He saw Corporal Yoon standing in front of him with a serious expression while the environment remained silent. Injured and lying on the ground, Corporal Yoon seemed weakened but still maintained a posture of resistance. Desperately, the character begs the corporal to help him, pleading for a gesture of compassion, but he turns his back without showing remorse, completely ignoring the boy's anguished plea. He grabs his clothes tightly, trying to stop him from walking away, but fails. Then he kicks him brutally, making him release the fabric and fall to the ground. Alone and helpless, he remains on the ground for a while, feeling the pain of rejection. A soldier approaches him, saying that South Koreans had no sense of loyalty. The man prepares to end the protagonist's life, determined to complete his dark mission. Tired of everything he had faced, he just wanted to rest and find a moment of peace. A hand is seen with some bandages wrapped around it, indicating injuries that reveal the intense struggle that had occurred. Seam is lying in a comfortable bed, feeling confused about what happened. He slowly gets up, not understanding where he is or how he got to that place. At that moment, he notices that his sword was next to the bed, within his reach. Touching his weapon carefully, he wonders if there might be any other survivors besides himself in that situation. He clings to the instrument, remembering Corporal Yoon and the hardships they faced together. He decided it was not the time to dwell on that, focusing on his survival and the immediate present. Suddenly, he hears a noise coming from the door, which catches his attention and puts him on alert. Someone enters his room, but he pretends to be asleep to avoid being discovered, holding his breath. The character talks about some delicious foods, mentioning dishes that awaken appetite and curiosity, and starts preparing something while Seaman moves closer to his sword. Waiting for the ideal moment, he tried to attack the figure. But upon looking more closely at the room, he is completely stunned, and finding no one, he begins to think it might have been a ghost. However, the old man was floating above his head. He says he was testing the boy after noticing he was pretending to sleep and becomes interested in his memories. Giving a light kick to his stomach, he asks for more respect. He continues saying he wouldn't hit harder because of the young man's injuries. The legendary martial artist living in dangerous lands accidentally save a young man on the brink of death. Jae-semin thanks the man for saving him, introducing himself as soldier while the monk identifies himself as Hai-sun. He scolds him, saying young people read too many martial arts novels while striking him with a staff. Confused, Jae-semin asks the elder who he is and where they are, but the man wants to know his identity first. Irritated, he responds that he is a soldier of the immortal unit, while the elder questions his powerful aura. The elder explains that the energy is pure, harmonious, and limitless, capable of being everything or nothing in this world. Surprised, Semin tries to understand what is being said while murmuring the word Taegak with hesitation. Reflecting on fate, the old man says everything is part of his karma. The elder reveals that most of the southern soldiers perished while the northern soldiers retreated soon after. A dark memory arises showing that East Semin was abandoned by his comrade on the battlefield. The man with glowing eyes is highlighted as someone comments that he survived, emitting a strange intense glow. Worried, Semin asks if he will be able to return, while the elder replies enigmatically. A metallic platform is shown on the forest floor surrounded by trees, creating a mysterious and silent environment. The elder introduces himself as Nohakjae while both stand atop a mountain surrounded by wind. Observing the old man, the protagonist concludes that he is not originally from the north due to his accent. The old man ended up in that place because of unfinished business, reflecting on his past choices. Thinking the boy must be hungry, he said they should eat before continuing. Offering food to Semin, the elder says he seemed to be starving, showing concern for his well-being. Curious, he asks where the elder got the food, and he replies that he bought it at a supermarket. While a young man is sitting, the old man stands and when questioned, says he's just going for a walk. The elder advises Semin to focus on his recovery, stating that it's time to take care of his body. Calmly, he turns his back and walks away. Alonely reflects on his thoughts, admitting that being alone makes him think even more about his situation. While tending to his wounds, he thinks of his parents and whether they had been informed. He sets those thoughts aside and decides to focus on his healing. The sun rises between the mountains after 10 days, lighting the landscape and marking the start of a new day. Preparing something, a pot, Seaman calls for the elder, who responds irritated, asking when it was this time. While cooking, he questions the man about the mysterious task he is performing in that place. The old man, lying down relaxed, looks at Seaman and seriously asks if he really wants to know. Realizing the boy was already well, he decides he will tell him more. He asked him to follow immediately without hesitation and jumps off with immense speed and agility. And he jumps off with immense speed, leaving the young man behind who tries to catch up. As the boy follows him, asking him to wait, he becomes increasingly intrigued. He doesn't understand how that man could move so fast at such an advanced age, admiring his energy. The two were standing on a tree trunk, observing the stunning view around them. It was the military base for the Northern Army, a strategic and imposing sight in the landscape. The old man informs that there was something evil inside that place, his expression revealing concern and seriousness. Frightened, the boy tries to understand what the elder is talking about, feeling it chill down his spine. It was a gate connected to hell, a portal that could bring great danger and destruction. Observing a bit more, they could sense the power of the dark forces emanating an oppressive energy. And to think that certainly it would not be a passage connected to heaven, but rather a portal to the unknown. The old man starts pulling something from his clothing, revealing an object that could be crucial to the situation, and he tastes a bit of a strong drink without offering a sip to the young man. He explains that in that place, human experiments were being conducted cruelly and inhumanly. Using demonic powers, scientists carried out tests that defied ethics and morality. While looking, he says the South Korean soldiers were the same, unaware of the gravity of their actions since they were capable of taking something as theirs without even knowing what it was. It was an evil power that should not exist in that place, representing a threat to all humanity. The two continue walking side by side. They stop abruptly upon spotting a terrifying figure surrounded by dark magic. Curious, the man questions who the boy next to the elder was. The protagonist realizes that his aura was the same as the one the pit had. Park Min-cheol says he heard the old elder was taking a walk through the forest and came to check it out. Grateful, the old man said it wasn't a big event, but rather a danger. He asked the boy to leave immediately, insisting that he should deal with that man alone. Even so, the boy remained by his side, determined not to let him face the danger alone. He wanted to make sure the old man would be all right by himself, worried about his safety and well-being. He knew the elder was a master, but still felt the need to protect him. But that guy was really dangerous, almost like a demon in human form. He advances toward the two characters, wanting to know what they were talking about. The old man pushes the boy away, ordering him to leave. With his powers, he throws him far and he flies over the forest canopy. The boy knew it wasn't an ordinary person and begged him to stay safe. Running quickly, he was finally reaching his destination, feeling adrenaline pumping through his veins. The protagonist stops briefly to rest, trying to catch his breath after the intense run, until he notices a creature in front of him that seemed to be a jorg, threatening and imposing. He makes a movement with his hand, desperately searching for his sword, which he had left behind. But he realizes he left it, and has no weapon to defend himself against the monster. Now that red-eyed monster would attack him, and he felt fear rising within him. He tried to think of a solution to the situation he was in, searching for a viable alternative. He decided to approach the beast, extending one hand cautiously, trying not to provoke the creature. The jaw watched those movements closely, evaluating each gesture and deciding whether to attack or not. The boy managed to connect with the four-legged creature and pet its head. He asked if the animal would like to follow him, hoping the jorg would accept his friendly offer. And the two set off together as equals, forming an unexpected alliance amidst the danger. Coming near a river, he scoops up some water in an improvised bucket. He offers it to the jorg, wondering if it was hungry, concerned for the well-being of his new friend. Seeing that the animal's teeth were fine, he gives it a piece of raw meat. The creature eats the meat while the protagonist reflects on his life. Sitting down, he thinks about how he's waiting for an old man to win a fight against a demon. Memories start to surface in Seaman's mind, bringing disturbing images of a dark past. A figure of a boy appears, sitting in front of a computer on a dark and silent night. His hands are firmly placed on the table next to bones that seem to belong to unknown creatures. Seaman slowly approaches, trying to understand the situation while the atmosphere remains tense. The boy, upon hearing Seaman's movement, quickly turns around, revealing his frightening face and black eyes. He stares at the protagonist and begins to emit strange sounds that echo through the room, heightening the tension. His mouth opens grotesquely, and something strange and threatening begins to emerge from within. Now transformed, the creature charges toward the hero, showing its massive teeth ready to attack violently. Seaman notices the creature's movement and, in a quick motion, prepares to defend himself from the imminent attack. With a precise strike, he cuts off the creature's head, protecting himself and ending the confrontation decisively. While cleaning his hands in the river, he thinks that this was the true nature of demons, where instinct was strongest. He recalls Corporal Yoon's escape and looks at his own reflection in the river, saying he understood that life worked that way. The sun slowly rises and the old man returns, bringing with him stories of his adventures. The boy is curious to know everything that happened during the elder's absence. He tries to make a joke but gets slapped in the face before finishing the sentence. When asked if he had won, the elder says it was a draw, smiling enigmatically. The elder calls out to Seaman, who responds confused while wondering about the sudden question. Seaman explains that there's about a year left until his discharge, questioning why the elder asked that. Holding a canteen, he looks seriously at Seaman and tells him to use that time for himself. A small creature named Mandrako starts to scream. Mandrako summoned demonic beasts as the spilled blood became powerful nourishment for his creature. Hidden among the shadows, the protagonist watched everything closely, analyzing every movement of the beasts. The beasts kept arriving, advancing with determination, and showing all their fury in their gaze. With his sword in hand, the hero waited for the perfect opportunity to attack and defend himself. Resting the weapon on his shoulder, he cautiously approached, ready to face the fierce enemies. With a few precise strikes, he defeated all the creatures that now lay lifeless on the ground. However, a few more monsters remained preparing to attack and cause more destruction. They exchanged challenging looks, feeling the tension rise as they prepared for the final confrontation. The Mandraka was already preparing to scream again, threatening a piece of the place. When Senna managed to silence the monster, he felt a momentary relief, knowing he had overcome a great challenge. After finishing off that small piece of nature, he turned to the other two, determined to move forward. With a command, he told them to follow him, his confidence renewed after the intense battle they had faced. A voice complains about the boy's punctuality, saying he was very late, adding a touch of humor to the situation. The old man is lying down while watching the warrior approach, assessing his actions and the determination he shows. Seaman jokes by saying that judging by the man's temperament, his time was running out. The Mandrako was trapped in the bag, restless and agitated, waiting for a chance to escape. Curious, the old man asks how everything went, trying to understand the details of the recent situation, and he calls him an idiot for not understanding the basics yet, frustrated with the lack of attention. The boy doesn't understand the elder's tone, feeling confused by the criticism he received. The animals that accompany him would become part of the meal, a practical solution for their survival. After enjoying the delicious food, the boy prepares his sword and begins to reflect his energy. The young man prepares to hunt demonic beasts, honing the yin-yang martial art in a duel. After a year of intense training, he reflects on his new lifestyle and progress. The old man dodges the sword with immense ease and returns the strike to the boy, demonstrating that he still possessed impressive skills and quick reflexes. A year earlier, the elder had taught him martial arts with patience and dedication in exchange for only one task, to help seal the gates of hell. The protagonist had greatly improved thanks to all the old man's teachings, overcoming his own limitations. The man's skills were comparable to the level of Black Buck, a feared and respected fighter. Touching his shoulder, he asks if it was going to rain that day, worried about the weather. If the gates of hell are not sealed, the world will be plunged into chaos by the evil that emerges. The boy perceives all the old man's concern. There were only 15 days left to begin the carefully crafted plan full of expectations. Time passed very quickly, as if the days were flying by in the midst of anxiety. So the great day would arrive, bringing with it the opportunity to change their destiny. After 15 days had passed, the tension increased, and everyone prepared for what was to come. The two slept in their respective beds, immersed in a deep and restorative sleep. Lying on his pillow, the protagonist thought about tomorrow, reflecting on the challenges that awaited him, in which he would seal the gates of hell and return home longing for the peace he had lost. When he returned, he knew he would be flooded with interview requests, his story becoming of public interest. He was even already thinking about what to say, imagining how his life would change completely. Sleep came slowly and finally drifted off into a deep and restorative rest. The figure of darkness is shown emanating a sinister aura that provokes fear and tension. Two characters engage in an intense battle, fighting with all their might in an epic confrontation. The man tries to strike the boy with all his fury, determined to defeat him at any cost. Being very skilled, he manages to dodge the attacks using his agility and quick reflexes to protect himself. It was only a dream on the protagonist who speaks while sleeping. The sun slowly begins to rise, lighting the sky with shades of orange and yellow, and he prepares, adjusting the hem of his pants, making sure everything is in order for the battle. He puts on his coat, feeling the protection and offers against the morning cold. He gathers his supplies and is ready for the battle, determined to face the challenges ahead. Now he looked more like a soldier with a firm posture and appropriate clothing. The old man hands him something and orders him to press it, his serious expression indicating the importance of the object. He thinks it might be a car key, but doubt lingers in his mind. The boy presses the button and hears nothing, feeling of growing anticipation in the air until a huge explosion occurs right behind him, making him turn around quickly, surprised and alarmed. After completing a mission, he was to eliminate any place to return to, ensuring there was no escape. Now they would go together to the place, united in their determination to face what was to come. With a tense look, the hero headed toward the final battle, feeling adrenaline pulse through his veins. The enemy's defenses have become much larger and stronger, challenging his skills and strategies at every step. According to the old man, the People's Army was researching the mass production of raiders using evil aura. Park Minute Cheol was already an excellent raider, but through biological experiments, he became a true monster. At that moment, he could not be ignored, trembling for what the future might bring. The old man asked the boy to follow him. He quickly begins to camouflage himself using his magic. Confused, the protagonist asked what the plan was to eliminate all the henchmen. He needed to know more to better prepare, but the old man asked him to remain silent. Two soldiers talk about strengthening themselves like Commander Park Minute Chul. A hand rests on the wall, seeking support while cautiously observing the surrounding situation, and the old man slips past the guards unnoticed, while Semin tries to fight bravely against the enemies. The man warns that there were intruders on site, his voice filled with urgency and concern. But it was already too late to call for help, and they ended up tied with ropes without options. Wasting no time, the old man keeps walking, determined to find a solution to the critical situation. Farther ahead, soldiers were enjoying a meal. The two men walked in silence so as not to be noticed. During the old man's last trip to fetch supplies, he mentions that day would be the new leader's birthday. Thinking from another angle, the protagonist realizes that the leader was helping them unknowingly. Upon reaching a higher point, the elder realizes the moment was perfect. The boy carefully pulls something from his backpack knowing it was crucial to the situation and hands the mandrakov to the old man, trusting he would know how to handle the creature. With his powers, he begins to manipulate the creature, invoking abilities that surprise everyone present, causing it to release a thunderous scream that echoes through the area and creates great commotion. So loud that the protagonist has to cover his ears, feeling the pain of the piercing sound. The sound echoes throughout the area, growing louder and louder. After that, they would have to move very quickly. But the boys still asked about the old man's plan to stop everything, not knowing many details. Looking at the evil forces, they seemed much deeper than the last time. With his hands, the old man covers the boy's mouth. The soldiers are extremely concerned about the noise they just heard. With a flashlight, the two hidden characters are spotted. Trying to flee, they jump from the top of the building. The soldier tries to contact his comrades, warning that there were intruders at the western border. With wide eyes, he comes across something suspicious. A large creature was arriving at the barracks, advancing with heavy and threatening steps, causing panic. But it wasn't just one. There were several of all terrifying shapes and sizes. A soldier shouts to alert the colonel, his voice echoing amid the chaos. The barriers break as if made of paper, unable to withstand the strength of the creatures. Meanwhile, the two characters keep running, and the boy praises the old man's plan. They were already getting close to the evil forces, determined to face the challenge that awaited them. When two men appear in their path, ready to block their advance and cause trouble. But the two are very skilled and dodge the attacks, showing impressive agility and dexterity. The elder stomps on the warrior's head, neutralizing him quickly with a precise and strong move. And the two go on defeating every man in their path, advancing with unwavering confidence and determination. The old man's speed is indescribable, astonishing all who witness his incredible agility and strength. Now they position themselves near the dark entities, feeling the evil energy that emanated from the place. Several scrolls with mystical inscriptions are strategically placed on the ground, forming a protective circle. Around the supernatural entity, the symbols glowed subtly, creating a barrier against the dark forces. The young men recognized those rituals as part of the ancestral knowledge guarded by the master for many centuries. Bao, the elder, prepared the enchantment while his apprentice remained watchful, observing any suspicious movement. Suddenly, the disciple sensed a disturbing presence silently approaching from the shadows of the place. Park Minute Cheol appeared unexpectedly at his flank with clenched fists, ready to deliver a fatal blow. With a swift movement, the enemy struck the boy violently, hurling him toward the dimensional abyss. The impact flung the young warrior into the interdimensional fissure that pulsed the cosmic energy. However, the wise master managed to quickly grab the apprentice's clothing, preventing his fall into the eternal void. However, he had to throw the protagonist toward the edge and ended up falling into the rift. At that very moment, he joined his hands, concentrating deeply as a powerful energy began to emerge. The commander, confused, did not understand the man's intentions and ordered him to stop immediately. Seaman charged toward the evil soldier, determined to face his adversary in a fierce battle. Both drew their swords, ready for the fight with the tension rising between the two combatants. The protagonist displayed an intense gaze full of fury, reflecting his determination to win the battle. The atmosphere was charged with energy as the warriors prepared for the decisive confrontation. The protagonist had a look of fury filled with emotion, while the soldier of darkness provoked him. The intense battle between the two began immediately. The commander was thrown against the wall, resulting in a huge and impressive hole. He couldn't believe what he was seeing and was frightened by the strength of the opponent's attack. The man, surprisingly, did not show invisible wounds and seemed completely free of exhaustion. The fight continued fiercely, leaving everyone around in shock. With his sword in hand, he was already ready for the next round and no longer seemed human. Seaman was violently hurled against the wall, feeling the pain of the impact's force. That fight seemed extremely ridiculous and unfavorable, with the chances of victory quickly slipping away. However, the boy would not give up so easily and decided to run forward with determination. The two forces fought intensely against each other, creating an atmosphere of palpable tension. The commander was undeniably much stronger, demonstrating skills that impressed everyone. He tried to get closer to the old man, looking for a chance to deliver a decisive blow. However, Seaman would not allow that to happen, determined to protect his mentor at all costs. Dark lightning surrounded his body from top to bottom, emanating a sinister energy. The protagonist attempted different and creative strikes, searching for a way to approach the enemy. Despite his efforts, it was extremely difficult to defeat the commander, who always seemed one step ahead. In that critical situation, it might have been better to give up and look for an alternative to escape the fight. However, he did not feel intimidated by the enemy's provocations. As he tried to strike with his sword, the man caught the weapon with one of his hands. He threw the boy to the other side, demonstrating his impressive strength and power. A bit of blood could be seen on the ground, evidencing the severity of the current situation. Tired and wounded, the hero tries to get up, fighting against the pain and exhaustion. Looking like a demon with wings, Park Min-cheol approaches him. The building is already in flames and the monsters were furious. At that moment, Seaman realized he would need a stronger aura to defeat his adversary. He declares the words, "If you seek to live, you will die, and if you are prepared to die, you will live." A bit of blood drips from his wounds and he was willing to sacrifice everything, even his soul, to go beyond. Meanwhile, the old man continues focused, channeling all his energy into the unfolding battle. However, the protagonist was already standing, determined not to give up so easily. His aura shines stronger than ever, reflecting his determination and growing power. With all the strength and skill, he charges quickly toward his adversary. His speed is impressive, surprising everyone around with the agility he displays. The boy's new powers leave Park Min-cheol quite intrigued and concerned about the situation. With accumulated rage, he strikes the commander directly in the face, causing a devastating impact. The powerful blow sends him flying, making everyone around astonished by the scene. The man begins to realize that this would be an extremely difficult and challenging battle for him. Meanwhile, the old man was preparing something mysterious, focusing on his powerful and secret technique. An intense light begins to emerge from the rift, indicating he might have completed the technique. Suddenly, a giant monster appears at the scene, causing panic and surprise among those present. The light slowly dissipates, making the tension in the environment grow even more. Park Min-cheol realizes something is wrong and that the situation is about to escalate. He orders the soldier to send a signal, trying to quickly understand what was happening. Meanwhile, the creatures kept getting closer, increasing the tension and fear in the air. With rage in his red eyes, he screams furiously at the boy, challenging his courage. Stating that he would not let him die peacefully, his determination intensifies even more. Once again, he throws himself into the fight, determined to face any challenge that arises. Quickly reaching the control panel, the soldier calls for help for the situation. With effort, he pulls a lever. The gate begins to open slowly, revealing an intense energy that rapidly expands. The old man remains in the middle of that energy, focused on his crucial task. He realizes what they were trying to do, understanding the gravity of the situation. In one of his hands, he holds something, a powerful instrument that was extremely useful. He draws a little more energy from the papers he had left underneath. Then he gathers all this power into the instrument, channeling his strength for the next step. The glow it emits is extremely strong, illuminating the surroundings with a blinding light, and a ball of light begins to form, growing in size. Countless creatures fly through the sky, and the two characters are face to face. The commander realizes that it's extremely difficult to dodge that powerful energy rapidly approaching. Moreover, there was no safe place to run, leaving him with no options to escape. Seeing that immense power, the boy was deeply concerned about the elder's safety. However, he noticed that the old man was fine and focused on his task. The man had destroyed that hole entirely on his own and thinks he wants to reach that level one day. As he looks more closely, he sees an evil creature behind the old man. His eyes widen as the monster arrives and pierces the elder's chest, and the only thing the boy can do is scream. The two characters are in a ravine. As he approaches, a boy asks how he ended up there all alone, and the man says it was a mistake from the past. He had turned a blind eye to injustice and deceived others because of his own honor. He lived a selfish life, thinking only of himself and ignoring the needs of others. Many people can't live that way, as solidarity and empathy are essential in life. However, this time it would be different, and he was determined to change his approach. Everyone could change if given a new chance, even if there were things in the world that couldn't be changed. At that moment, the boy no longer remembers the man's words, and the situation returns to the present. He is slowly dying due to the severe injuries he suffered during the previous intense battle. Without a doubt, the boy knew the old man was much stronger in that distant time. The evil creature continues to pursue him relentlessly, increasing the tension and fear in the situation, and the dark energy spreads through the environment, leaving it heavy. Desperate, the boy starts running quickly after his friend, trying to save him at any cost. The commander doesn't understand why he is fleeing, confused by the unfolding situation. His eyes transmit an intense energy mixed with extreme fury that cannot be ignored. With his sword firmly in hand, he delivered a powerful blow to the man before retreating. However, the old man begs him not to approach, warning about the danger ahead. With his beard covered in blood, he orders the boy to run away immediately, trying to protect him from danger. The boy does not feel intimidated and continues to run bravely toward him. He remembers some moments from his life when he often ran away from difficult situations. Many times, he fled from various situations in the past, always looking for a safe way out. But he knew that people are capable of changing and making a difference in their lives. Along the way, he received kindness from many people who helped him in hard times. And he became a raider, fighting for the good of humanity and defending those he loves. In that decisive moment, he would not run away, determined to face his worst fears. With his aura brighter than ever, he got close to the evil creature. The monster had a crystal on its forehead and a terrifying appearance. With his sword in hand, he realized something important that left him deeply worried and confused. His aura had completely disappeared, leaving him vulnerable and directionless in the middle of the battle. He was lost, unable to connect to anything, feeling increasingly disoriented and weak. Until in a moment of desperation, he breaks a wall in front of him with his sword, then he sees an intense light shining on his face, bringing hope and clarity. He notices that there is a man standing in front of him but cannot recognize him immediately, until suddenly he is thrown backward, passing through countless stunning and varied landscapes. His energy travels through the dense forests, the majestic ice mountains rising imposingly, and his body can even be seen floating in space among the stars. He remembers the old man's words calling him an idiot for his actions. While floating in the void, the wise old man appears again, bringing a new twist, and with a touch, he brings him back to life, not allowing him to die. An extreme force brings him back to reality and falls rapidly from the sky. He distances himself from the elder, feeling the gravity of the situation around him. His eyes begin to move slowly, trying to adjust to the new reality around him. He's lying on the ground with his sword beside him, feeling disoriented and confused. As he gets up, he begins to recognize that familiar place filled with meaningful memories. He notices something moving behind him. It was a large creature that showed some curiosity toward the outsider. A purple mist surrounds the area, and two moons are in the sky along with strange plants. The protagonist realizes that this is a different world. 3 years later, in another dimension, a man is seen holding a coffee while greeting everyone good morning. An employee notices that Mr. J. Young had arrived early at company. Tired, he said that technology was advancing too fast, and that was a problem. He tries to ask if he could give up, but the boss refuses and decides to start the briefing. A presentation is shown by a woman. She said that according to the report, blue-marked raiders should be enough to handle the situation. Beside her, a man says he will upgrade to green mark next month after learning the aura method. Currently, raiders were no longer afraid of gates. Thanks to advances in forecasting technology, the number of accidents had decreased, and the classification of raiders became much more detailed, making them choose only an appropriate gate for each level. However, a true raider should be prepared for any kind of danger, as there was always a chance something could go wrong. Smiling, the woman asks if Mr. Hyun J. Young would like to take control of the attack order. The man had the most experience among everyone present in that important meeting. However, another questions his skill level, challenging his authority and knowledge. He argues that they should discuss the situation further, looking for solutions to the problems faced. He states that he had passed the production exam and would reach the green mark next month, so he should take on the mission. Nervously, the woman asks if they should proceed with Kim Dae Young as the leader. As there was no objection in the room, he was chosen. Jae Young didn't want to express himself about it, but his colleague claimed that the most important thing was real-world experience. Many people are seen unloading a car, quickly organizing the items that need to be used. The soldier prepares by putting on his gloves, showing determination and focus on his task. Meanwhile, a man who found the situation strange approaches and asks about it. He asks if the man was upset about what happened earlier. However, the two shake hands, stating that working together is essential to win. Curious friend comes closer to know what was said, but it wasn't anything important. The cars were parked near the grass and the soldiers were already getting ready. Kim Dae-young asks if the forecast report was already complete. Apparently, there were creatures like Jorg and Karg, not difficult to deal with even in abundance. The mission commander states that Jorg wouldn't be a problem. Finally, everyone could enter the portal, eager to escape the dangerous situation they were facing. The gate would open in just 10 seconds, creating growing anticipation among those present. The countdown begins, increasing the tension as everyone prepares for the imminent battle. Energy dissipates through the environment, creating an electrifying atmosphere that surrounds all the combatants. This causes the gate to slowly open, revealing what lies ahead. The rift begins to grow larger, releasing a powerful and threatening force until countless creatures come out and head toward the humans ready to attack. There were a total of 30 Jords classified as level 8, challenging the courage of the men, and the men had to deal with them immediately as the fight began with intense blows. A creature tries a silent attack from behind, but the character is quicker with his sharp sword. He cuts off the beast's head with precision, wiping a bit of blood from his face. An archer continues to complete the mission, shooting with skill and focus at his targets. Countless beasts are hit, falling to the ground as the battle intensifies around them. The character thinks that those men were better than him, admiring their impressive skills and courage. All agents should be prepared for a second wave of attacks. Once again, the creatures were already returning with full force. Now they were the cards, classified as level 9. However, the gate begins to change, leaving everyone extremely confused. The man questions what happened, trying to understand the chaotic situation unfolding around him. And apparently, the gate was expanding, releasing more creatures that threatened everyone's safety. Now the agents were urgently calling for reinforcements to win the fight and face the powerful enemies. They struck the creatures with strength and skill, showing courage and determination amid the intense combat. They did know what to expect, feeling the tension rise as the battle continued. Confident Kim Dae-young was sure there would only be Jorgs and Kargs. A support request was finalized. Worried, the hero asked the man to stay calm no matter what appeared. With a grim look, he was anxiously waiting for that moment since he didn't know what might show up until a monstrous figure appears in front of him and he shows intense fear. It was a rank 43 monster, a Drake, a high-level monster that even Goldmark raiders needed intense preparation to face. Looking back, the soldier noticed a strange movement that made him uneasy and concerned. The troops were retreating, leaving the area quickly as if something terrible was about to happen. Many soldiers dropped their swords on the ground, abandoning their weapons amidst the growing despair. Trembling at the worst, everyone wanted to flee and run far away from that terrifying and chaotic situation. But the character knew what had to be done, that everyone should keep their weapons ready for combat. They had to hold out as long as possible until support arrived, but no one knew how they would stop that immense creature. Imposing, Jiang said they should try everything even to the death so that others wouldn't be hurt. The creature's teeth were huge and sharp, reflecting light in a threatening and intimidating way. He saw the soldiers as miniatures due to his gigantic size, which impressed everyone around. Suddenly, something hits him and he falls, losing balance unexpectedly. Everyone is left speechless, surprised by the scene unfolding before their stunned eyes. Someone was on top of the creature, challenging it and saying hi to his companions with confidence. With long hair, he says it's been a while since he saw his colleagues. Descending from the beast, he asks what year it was. He is shocked to learn that it was 20x. The soldier doesn't recognize the man who seems quite strange and suspicious. He explains that he had been inside the world of that gate for a long time. When they try to identify him, they realize there is no record. He was an unregistered raider and he claims to be an otaku. Saying nothing, the protagonist listens to theories about him. Pointing at Jae-young, he says he would go with that soldier and adds that apparently he had a soul. With an order, Seaman tells everyone to maintain their positions, aiming to uphold the honor of the service. He says a raider wanted to be with someone who had a soul, not with those who threw their weapons on the ground and fled. Scratching his head, the man agreed, reflecting on the situation while trying to understand everything. The red car drives down the street, attracting everyone's attention with its vibrant and shiny color. Curious, the boy asks if the car belonged to the man, and he replies that he bought it in installments. But he didn't seem like the kind of person who bought things he couldn't afford. Then the man replies that it was because of his girlfriend, since she said he should be a boyfriend she could be proud of. Seven says he respects him for being a romantic, admiring his sensitivity and outlook on life. Embarrassed, the man decides to stop talking, feeling a bit awkward from the attention he received. But without him, he couldn't stay quiet alone for long and had no one to talk to. In the buildings of the Raider management office, Semin was sitting across from two men in suits. Jae-young watches everything closely, analyzing every movement and expression of the men talking to Semin. The employee informs him that the person might be telling the truth. He really could have lived all that time inside the gate. The men continue with the questions to Lee Semin, who hadn't heard his own name in a long time. His fingerprints showed that he had already died. A report shows that he died in an accident during a mission serving his country. With arms crossed, the protagonist doesn't answer the question. The men still wanted to know about the unit called Immortal in the DMZ. That was confidential information for now. People who were talented but failed the classification exam were taken to a special unit. The rest of the conversation couldn't be heard from the outside. Every time the man opened his mouth to reveal something, the men in front of him looked increasingly shocked. The three characters talk after leaving the interrogation room. For now, Seomun should stay at the location with Raider Jae-young, but the man seemed shocked to hear that as he didn't expect to stay with the stranger. Showing concern, Lee Seomun begs him not to abandon a man who has no home or family. He keeps speaking in incomplete desperation, trying to express his worries and frustrations about the situation until a soldier accepts the responsibility, deciding to face the challenges ahead. His superior says he did a great job that day, praising his courage and determination. In Jae-young's building, everything's calm and quiet. He was humming while opening a cabinet, excited about the task ahead. He was picking out some clothes for the visitor, trying to choose the best available options. He looks at a pair of underwear with a strange print, laughing at the peculiar choice he found in the closet. They would buy new clothes later. For now, Seaman would have to wear some of his. He makes a joke about the underwear as he holds it in his hands, finding the print funny. That was a gift from his ex-girlfriend, bringing back memories from the past. The man comes out of the shower super relaxed, feeling refreshed and ready for what comes next. With new clothes, he feels much more at ease. Impressed with his appearance, Jae-young says he looks more like a regular human. A sword is shown near the wall, gleaming under the light like a symbol of power. Sitting on the couch, the two begin to talk about the gate and its dangerous implications. Lee Simmons says it was literal hell in that place, describing the chaotic situation they faced. The protagonist's family could be contacted now that he had returned, revisiting complex feelings. But he doesn't seem happy about it, reflecting on the consequences of his return and the changes. The man offers his phone to his friend, who says he would make a call later. So the two decide to go out, to buy new clothes and get a haircut. But the protagonist doesn't want to take advantage of Jae-young's hospitality, who says the dead Drake was for his own gain. Extremely interested in that, he gets up quickly, feeling the adrenaline of the situation rise. He asks for new clothes and a nice dinner, eager to feel comfortable and satisfied. For now, you would depend on Jae-young, but in exchange, you would teach martial arts. The man gets emotional with the revelation. When they arrive at the beauty salon, the voice says his hair was very beautiful. Returning the compliment, he says the hairdresser's hands are much more beautiful than his. Because of his long hair, the woman assumed he was a talented and creative musician. She notices that he was very close to Jae-young, which makes her even more curious. While cutting his hair, she wants to know more about the terrifying monsters he faces. The woman cuts the hair at a length that matches his face. When finished, Lee Seaman looks like a completely renewed person. He thanks the woman with a sincere smile, showing his gratitude for the excellent service he received, and asked his friend to pay the bill, trusting that he wouldn't mind. While passing his card, Seaman walks out all happy, feeling light and cheerful about the day. As they leave the store, he asks why he had become a member, but he only talks about the Drake. So he leaves the subject for later, deciding it was better not to dig deeper. Nervous, the man points to something in front of him, trying to divert attention from his anxiety. It was a jacket with a golden dragon design, flashy and full of personality, and military pants that complemented the look, giving a tacky vibe to the outfit. That would be the perfect style for Simmons' new clothes. However, the man asked him to choose only one item because with that look, he looked extremely ridiculous. He tries to hold back laughter, knowing the combination wasn't the most suitable for the occasion. A voice asked them to come again, suggesting that the conversation wasn't over and there was more to discuss. He strolls down the street with his jacket and a sword in hand. Jae-young says you should never shop alone again. Now the two were going to eat something, excited by the idea of enjoying a meal together. But the protagonist asked to stop somewhere first, feeling that something needed to be resolved. He needed to fix his sword, ensuring it was in perfect condition for what was to come. The two get in the car and head to the next stop. When they arrive at the store, the second stop of the day, they are greeted by two employees who welcome them to Jeojan Metal Industry. At the counter, he says he needs to repair his equipment, explaining the situation to the attendants. He places his sword down for the men to see, hoping they could help him with the necessary repair. But the object was completely ruined with battle marks that showed its intense and exhausting use. It was an old model that had been discontinued a long time ago, making the repair task even more complicated. The sword looked like it belonged to a war veteran, having been used by a young punk. The man's recommendation is to buy other equipment since the repair would be very expensive. But it wasn't just a simple tool. It was his companion, symbol of his struggles. And he couldn't take care of the weapon due to the conditions he was in, constantly facing challenges. The man tries to make a call, seeking a solution that could help the young man in his need. And he decides he would help the young man, recognizing the importance of the sword to his journey and identity. He could pick up the sword in a week, ensuring it would be ready to meet the owner's demands. Now the two head toward lunch, chatting excitedly about what they want to eat. The protagonist mentions how strange it feels not to carry a sword in his hand, feeling vulnerable without it. And that made sense as he had been trapped in the other world for 3 long years without being able to fight. Beyond the gate, he had carried the sword everywhere at all times. He never put the sword aside even while sleeping, feeling he always needed it. The table is filled with numerous different dishes, each one more appetizing than the last. The two savor everything while talking animatedly about their experiences. In the other world, there were no cows, but something similar. The character's attention is diverted for a second, distracting him from the surrounding tension. Noticing that Jae Young's girlfriend arrives with 1,000 complaints, he feels slightly relieved. She introduces herself as Kim Yeon-a and says she's heard a lot of that mysterious and intriguing figure. Her presence brings a new dynamic to the situation, making the boy wonder about her intentions. The woman said he wasn't bothering at all, trying to ease the tension in the environment. Jae Young asks if she wasn't wearing too little clothing, raising an eyebrow and making a playful remark. He offers his jacket, worried she might catch a cold due to the chill. The two seem really cute to Lee Simon, who watches the interaction with a smile on his face. The tall buildings block some of the sunlight, creating a cozy atmosphere around them. The time reads 6:50 in the morning, and the soft daylight begins to shine in. On the couch, the protagonist wakes from a deep sleep, feeling a bit disoriented and tired. While his colleague sleeps in the bed, he decides it's time to get up and take action. He goes after a computer, curious to see what he might find on the screen. He looks at the screen and tries to interact with it, trying to familiarize himself with the device and its functions. It had been a long time since the last time he accessed the system. He searches the names of various people, trying to find information that could be useful for his situation, and he clicks on a folder named Manga, intrigued by what might be stored there. The Transcendence Network displays various screens, and he receives 100 points as a reward. Crying, a wave of relief flows through his body as repressed emotions finally revisit him. He continues typing and writing a text, expressing his feelings and thoughts in an intense and sincere way. At that moment, Jae Young realizes his colleague must have already woken up. She gets up and is startled to see a man inside her room. She thinks he's acting very strange, possibly having his mind affected by the gate.